The moment Victoria Hale whispered, "Pretend you're my husband," to a complete stranger, she had no idea she was signing both their death sentences or their only chance at survival. What happens when two people facing their darkest fears collide in a hospital corridor? When a desperate CEO and a terrified mechanic forge a lie that becomes their lifeline? This is a story about the thin line between survival and surrender, between pretending and feeling, between dying alone and learning to live together. Stay with me until the end, hit that like button, and comment your city below so I can see how far this story travels across the world. The fluorescent lights of Chicago Memorial Hospital hummed with the kind of relentless constancy that made Nathan Cole want to scream. They'd been humming for 3 hours now, 3 hours of sitting in this too-cold corridor outside the oncology wing, 3 hours of watching doctors pass with faces carefully trained to reveal nothing, 3 hours of his mind constructing and reconstructing every possible future where his daughter grew up without him. The waiting room chair dug into his spine, but Nathan barely noticed. His work boots were still dusty from the garage, flecks of motor oil under his fingernails that no amount of industrial soap could fully erase. He'd barely had time to lock up the shop before racing here, barely had time to call Mrs. Chen next door to pick up Ava from school, barely had time to think about anything except the word the emergency room doctor had used with such careful neutrality: mass. A mass in his right lung, approximately 4 centimeters. They'd need to biopsy to be sure, but given his history, the 20 years of smoking he'd quit 3 years ago when Sarah died, the persistent cough he'd been ignoring for 6 months, the weight loss he'd attributed to grief and skipped meals, the unspoken probability hung in the air like smoke. Nathan's phone trembled in his hands. The screen showed Ava's school photo from last month, gap-toothed smile, her mother's dark eyes, a smudge of purple marker on her cheek she'd refused to wash off because it was part of her design. She'd been drawing constantly since Sarah's death, filling notebook after notebook with crayon worlds where mothers didn't die of sudden aneurysms, where fathers didn't sit alone in hospital corridors, wondering how to tell a 6-year-old that she might lose everyone. The phone slipped from his shaking fingers and clattered against the linoleum. Careful with that. The voice came from his left, cool, controlled, with the kind of precision that suggested every word was chosen deliberately. A woman's hand appeared in his peripheral vision, manicured nails painted a professional shade of burgundy, picking up his phone with the efficiency of someone used to solving problems quickly. Nathan looked up. She was striking in the way that powerful people often are. Not conventionally beautiful, but commanding, the kind of presence that rearranged the energy of a room. Mid-40s, he guessed, with silver threading through her dark hair in deliberate streaks that probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her suit was charcoal gray, perfectly tailored, with a silk blouse underneath that caught the harsh hospital light and somehow made it elegant. Everything about her screamed money and control. Everything except her eyes. Her eyes betrayed her. They had the same haunted quality Nathan saw in his own mirror every morning, the look of someone who'd been awake for too many nights, who'd stared at too many ceilings, who'd made too many bargains with a universe that didn't bargain back. She glanced at his phone screen before handing it back. Ava's smile reflected in those guarded eyes for just a moment. "Your daughter?" she asked. Nathan nodded, not trusting his voice. "She's beautiful." The woman settled back into her own chair, 2 seats down, maintaining a careful distance. She held a leather portfolio in her lap, gripped with the kind of white-knuckled tension that suggested it was either very important or a very good prop to hold on to. "How old?" "6. Nathan's voice came out rougher than intended. He cleared his throat. 6.5. She'd want me to be specific. The corner of the woman's mouth twitched, not quite a smile, but close. Children usually do. She paused, her gaze drifting to the closed door of the oncology consultation room. "Here alone?" The question was casual, but Nathan heard the weight behind it. The real question, do you have anyone? "Yeah." He didn't elaborate. Didn't mention Sarah's parents in Arizona, who were too old and too frail to take on a grieving granddaughter. Didn't mention his own father, who'd walked out when Nathan was 12. Didn't mention the friends who'd slowly faded after Sarah died because grief made people uncomfortable, and Nathan had made it easy for them to leave. The woman nodded slowly, as if he'd confirmed something she already knew. "Me too." They sat in silence after that. Two strangers bound by the specific loneliness of hospital waiting rooms, by the particular terror of closed doors and uncertain diagnoses. Nathan checked his phone. 4:47 p.m. Mrs. Chen would have Ava by now, would probably already be setting up the craft supplies on her kitchen table, letting Ava lose herself in construction paper and glue, while Nathan's world potentially came apart. He was composing a text to check in when footsteps echoed down the corridor, sharp, purposeful, expensive shoes against linoleum. Nathan looked up to see a man approaching, late 50s, with the kind of tan that came from golf courses rather than construction sites, wearing a suit that probably cost more than Nathan's car. The man's eyes locked onto the woman beside Nathan with predatory focus. Victoria. His voice carried the false warmth of a poker player holding a winning hand. Didn't expect to see you here. Nothing serious, I hope. The woman, Victoria, went absolutely still. Nathan watched the transformation happen in real time. Her spine straightened, her expression smoothed into something professionally pleasant, but ultimately blank. Her hands relaxed their death grip on the portfolio. It was like watching someone put on armor. Thomas, she nodded coolly. Just a routine follow-up. You know how doctors are, always cautious. Thomas's smile sharpened. He was close enough now that Nathan could smell his cologne, something woody and aggressive. Cautious? Yes. His gaze swept over Victoria with calculated assessment. Though I have to say you've looked better. We all noticed at the last board meeting, the strain is showing. Something flickered across Victoria's face. Anger, fear, something raw and quickly suppressed. I appreciate your concern, she said, each word carefully measured. Though I'm quite fine, I assure you. Of course, of course. Thomas's eyes drifted to the consultation room door, then back to Victoria. Though being here alone does raise questions, doesn't it? About support systems, stability. The board has been discussing whether you're stretched too thin with the Lakeside merger. Some members worry about your capacity to handle such a significant expansion while managing personal challenges. Nathan watched Victoria's jaw tighten almost imperceptibly. He might not understand corporate politics, but he recognized a threat when he heard one. The merger is proceeding exactly as planned, Victoria said, her voice frost. My personal medical appointments are hardly relevant to... Everything's relevant when you're asking the board to approve a $300 million deal, Thomas interrupted smoothly. Leadership stability matters. We need to know our CEO can handle pressure, has a solid foundation, isn't going to, he paused delicately, fall apart at a crucial moment. The silence that followed felt dangerous. Nathan didn't plan what happened next. He didn't think about it, didn't weigh consequences or consider implications. He simply watched this woman, this stranger who'd asked about his daughter, with genuine kindness in her haunted eyes, being circled by a predator, and something in him snapped. Maybe it was 3 years of helplessness after Sarah died. Maybe it was 3 hours of fear about Ava's future. Maybe it was just that he was so tired of watching people suffer alone. Nathan stood up. Victoria's hand shot out and grabbed his, her fingers intertwining with his so quickly and naturally it could have been rehearsed. She pulled him down to sit beside her, closer now, their shoulders touching. Actually, I'm not alone, Victoria said, her voice steady but her hand trembling against Nathan's. Thomas, this is Nathan, my husband. The corridor seemed to freeze. Nathan felt his heart hammer against his ribs, felt the weight of Victoria's hand in his, felt Thomas's gaze swing toward him with shark-like assessment. He had approximately 3 seconds to decide whether to go along with this insane lie or expose Victoria's desperation to a man who clearly wanted to use it against her. He thought about Ava, about being alone, about the specific terror of facing mortality without anyone to hold your hand. Nathan squeezed Victoria's fingers and met Thomas's stare with the kind of direct, uncomplicated gaze he'd learned on garage floors and construction sites. The look of a man who had nothing to prove and nothing to hide. Thomas, Nathan said, letting his blue-collar Chicago accent come through uncorrected. Victoria's told me a lot about you. The statement was deliberately ambiguous, and Thomas clearly couldn't decide whether to be flattered or concerned. His smile became uncertain. I wasn't aware Victoria had married. There was no announcement. We like our privacy? Victoria cut in smoothly, her thumb moving against Nathan's palm in what might have been gratitude or panic. Nathan's not comfortable with publicity. You understand. Thomas's eyes narrowed, scanning Nathan's work boots, his oil-stained jacket, the calluses on his hands. The class assessment was obvious and dismissive. I see. And what do you do, Nathan? Auto mechanic. Nathan didn't flinch from it, didn't apologize for it. Own a shop in Bridgeport. How unexpected. Thomas's tone made it clear he meant something less polite. Well, I'm sure Victoria appreciates having someone to drive her to her appointments. The condescension dripped like acid. Though I still think the board should be informed about any health situations that might impact, the board will be informed of anything relevant to my role as CEO, Victoria interrupted, steel in her voice now. My routine medical screening doesn't qualify. Now, if you'll excuse us, we have an appointment. She stood, pulling Nathan up with her, their hands still connected. Thomas opened his mouth to protest, but Victoria was already moving, guiding Nathan down the corridor with the kind of graceful authority that made it clear the conversation was over. They turned the corner into a small alcove near the elevators. Victoria dropped Nathan's hand immediately, putting space between them, her chest rising and falling with rapid breaths. For a moment, neither of them spoke. I'm sorry. Victoria's voice was quiet, shaking slightly. That was completely inappropriate. I had no right to drag you into my mess. I'll tell him it was a misunderstanding. Is he going to use this against you? Nathan asked. Victoria's eyes snapped to his. What? That guy, Thomas. Is he trying to undermine you somehow? Victoria's laugh was sharp and humorless. Thomas Brennan, board member, former CEO candidate who lost to me 5 years ago. He's been waiting for me to show weakness ever since. She pressed her hand to her forehead. The Lakeside merger is the biggest deal of my career. If it succeeds, it cements my position for the next decade. If it fails, or if the board loses confidence in my leadership before it closes, he'll probably get my job. And being sick would make them lose confidence. Being sick and alone would. Victoria's voice cracked on the last word. Cancer patients with strong support systems have better outcomes. Everyone knows that. But more importantly, boards don't trust leaders who look vulnerable. If they think I'm facing a serious diagnosis without family, without stability, they'll see me as a liability. The merger deal will fall apart, and Thomas will swoop in as the steady hand they need. Nathan processed this. So you grabbed a random stranger in a hospital corridor and pretended he was your husband? Yes. Victoria closed her eyes. Which was desperate and stupid, and I completely understand if you want nothing to do with, how long do you need me to play along? Victoria's eyes flew open. What? Nathan shrugged, feeling oddly calm despite the insanity of what he was proposing. You said you have an appointment. I assume Thomas might be watching to see if I'm really here with you. How long do you need someone to pretend? You can't be serious. Lady, 2 hours ago I found out I might have lung cancer. My daughter's 6 years old, her mother's dead. If something happens to me, she's got nobody. Nathan heard his voice roughen, pushed through it. I understand being alone. I understand desperate. And I've got nothing but time today to sit in this hospital and be scared anyway. Might as well be scared while helping someone. Victoria stared at him like he was speaking a foreign language. You don't even know me. You picked up my phone when I dropped it. You asked about my daughter. You called her beautiful. Nathan met her gaze. That's more kindness than I've gotten from most people in 3 years. So yeah, I'll sit through your appointment and hold your hand if that helps. No expectations, no strings, just one terrified person helping another. The silence stretched between them, loaded with the weight of strangers considering trust. Finally, Victoria spoke. I have a consultation in 20 minutes to discuss biopsy results. If it's cancer, we'll discuss treatment options. The appointment could take an hour, maybe more. She paused. Thomas will probably find an excuse to linger. He'll want to verify you're real. Then I'm real. Nathan held out his hand formally. Nathan Cole, 35. Widower. Father to Ava. Mechanic. Currently waiting for my own biopsy results and absolutely terrible at sitting still when I'm anxious. Victoria took his hand, and this time her grip was firm, professional. Victoria Hale, 43. CEO. Currently facing possible breast cancer diagnosis and desperately trying not to lose everything I've built. She attempted a smile. Also terrible at sitting still. Then we'll be terrible at it together. They walked back to the oncology wing side by side. Thomas was gone, but Nathan could feel eyes on them. Hospital staff, other patients, people who existed in the peripheral awareness of those waiting for life-altering news. Victoria led him to a different seating area, more private, with a view of the Chicago skyline through floor-to-ceiling windows. The city sprawled below them, indifferent and immense. Somewhere down there, Ava was probably covering Mrs. Chen's table with glitter. Somewhere down there, Victoria's company was managing millions of dollars in development deals. Somewhere down there, life continued for people who weren't waiting in hospitals for someone to tell them whether they were dying. "Can I ask you something?" Victoria said, settling into a chair by the window. Nathan sat beside her. "Sure. When Thomas was talking to me before you stood up, why did you help? You could have just stayed out of it." Nathan thought about that. "My wife Sarah used to volunteer at a women's shelter. She'd come home sometimes and tell me about women who were being hurt, controlled, manipulated. She'd say the worst part wasn't the obvious violence. It was the subtle kind. The kind where someone makes you feel like you're crazy, or weak, or incapable. The kind where they isolate you." He looked at Victoria. "That guy was doing that to you, making you feel alone on purpose so you'd be vulnerable. I didn't like it." Victoria's eyes glistened. She looked away quickly, blinking hard. "Your wife sounds like she was remarkable." "She was." Nathan's throat tightened. "She died 3 years ago. Aneurysm. No warning, no chance to say goodbye. One morning, she was making pancakes for Ava. The next, she was gone." "I'm so sorry." They sat in silence, watching the city. After a moment, Victoria spoke again. "I've never been married, never had children. Spent my entire adult life building a company, making deals, proving myself in rooms full of men who thought I didn't belong there." She laughed softly, bitterly. "Now I'm here, and I realize I built an empire but forgot to build a life. If this is cancer, I'll face treatment alone. I'll recover alone, and if I don't recover..." She didn't finish the sentence. "You have friends, though," Nathan said. "Family?" "My parents died when I was in college. Car accident. I have a brother I haven't spoken to in 8 years. We had a falling out over the family business. Friends..." Victoria shrugged. "I have colleagues, people I play golf with, people I network with at charity galas, but no one I can call at 3 in the morning when I'm scared. No one who'd sit with me through this." Nathan understood that loneliness. After Sarah died, his friendships had evaporated like morning fog. People didn't know what to say, how to act around grief that wouldn't resolve itself neatly. Eventually, they stopped trying. Even his mechanic buddies from the shop had drifted away, uncomfortable with his silence, his sudden absences, the way joy had leaked out of him. "So we're both alone," Nathan said. "Yes." Victoria met his eyes. "But apparently, for the next hour, we're going to pretend we're not." "Ms. Hale." A nurse appeared in the doorway, clipboard in hand. "Dr. Morrison is ready for you." Victoria stood, smoothing her suit with hands that only trembled slightly. Nathan stood with her. "You really don't have to..." Victoria started. "I know," Nathan said, "but I'm going to anyway." The consultation room was smaller than Nathan expected, designed with the kind of careful comfort that only made the terrible news delivered there more jarring. Soft lighting, landscape paintings on the walls, a box of tissues strategically placed on every surface. Dr. Morrison was a woman in her 50s with kind eyes and the weary competence of someone who'd had too many difficult conversations. She looked surprised when Nathan followed Victoria in. "Dr. Morrison, this is my husband Nathan," Victoria said, the lie coming more smoothly this time. "I hope it's all right if he joins us." "Of course." Dr. Morrison gestured to 2 chairs facing her desk. "I always encourage patients to bring support to these appointments." They sat. Nathan could feel Victoria trembling in the chair beside him, though nothing in her posture betrayed it. He reached over and took her hand. This time she didn't hesitate. Her fingers laced through his and held on tight. Dr. Morrison opened a file. "I'll get straight to it, Victoria. The biopsy results confirm malignancy. Stage 1. A invasive ductal carcinoma, hormone receptor positive, HER2 negative." The words hung in the air like smoke. Nathan felt Victoria's hand clench around his. her nails digging into his palm. He held on, letting her hurt him if she needed to. The good news, Doctor, Morrison continued gently, is that we caught it early. The tumor is small, less than 2 centimeters, and shows no signs of lymph node involvement. Your prognosis is excellent. We're looking at lumpectomy followed by radiation therapy, possibly hormone therapy. 5-year survival rate for this stage is around 99%. 99%, Victoria repeated, her voice barely above a whisper. Yes, you're going to be fine, Victoria, but we need to act quickly. I'd like to schedule surgery within the next 2 weeks, followed by a course of radiation over 6 to 7 weeks. Nathan watched Victoria process this. She was nodding, her CEO mask sliding back into place, but he could feel her pulse racing where their wrists touched. What about work? Victoria asked. How much time will I need to take off? The surgery itself is relatively minor. You'll need about a week to recover. Radiation is typically done as outpatient treatment, 5 days a week. Most patients are able to work during radiation, though fatigue is common. I'd recommend a reduced schedule if possible. Victoria laughed, a sharp, stressed sound. I'm in the middle of closing a major merger. Reduced schedule isn't really an option. Dr. Morrison's expression became stern. Victoria, cancer treatment isn't something you can schedule around your convenience. Your health needs to be the priority. I strongly recommend you discuss this with your employer about medical leave options. I am the employer, Victoria interrupted. I'm the CEO. If I'm not there, if I show weakness right now, everything I've built could fall apart. Victoria, Dr. Morrison started. She'll do it, Nathan heard himself say. Both women turned to look at him. She'll follow your treatment plan. I'll make sure of it. Victoria's eyes widened, but Nathan squeezed her hand gently. We'll figure out the work stuff, he told her quietly. But the doctor's right. Your health comes first. Dr. Morrison looked between them, some of the tension leaving her shoulders. Good. I'm glad you have support through this. It makes a significant difference in outcomes. She pulled out a calendar. Let's get surgery scheduled, and I'll have my nurse coordinator reach out about radiation timing. The rest of the appointment passed in a blur of dates and medical terminology. Nathan held Victoria's hand through all of it, occasionally squeezing when he felt her starting to drift, anchoring her to the present when the future felt too overwhelming. Dr. Morrison gave them folders full of information, support group resources, nutritional guidance for cancer patients. When they finally emerged back into the corridor, Victoria was pale but composed. She still held the folders like weapons. Thank you, she said to Nathan. You didn't have to stay for that. Yeah, I did. Nathan checked his phone. 6:15 p.m. I should call Mrs. Chen, let her know I'm running late. Of course. Your daughter, Ava. Yeah. Nathan pulled up Mrs. Chen's contact, but before he could dial, his own name echoed down the corridor. Nathan Cole? A different nurse, a young man with kind eyes. Dr. Patterson is ready to see you about your biopsy results. Nathan's stomach dropped. He'd been so focused on Victoria's appointment that he'd almost forgotten his own. Almost. Victoria was watching him, understanding dawning in her eyes. You're here for results too. Yeah. What are they testing for? Lung mass, possible cancer. Nathan tried to keep his voice steady. Find out if I get to watch my daughter grow up, or if I need to start making arrangements for her future. Victoria's face crumpled, then immediately controlled itself. Do you want me to... Would it help if I came with you? Nathan started to say no, started to default to the isolation he'd learned over 3 years of grieving alone. But then he remembered how Victoria's hand had felt in his, how much it had helped to have someone there, even a stranger. Yeah, he said. Yeah, that would help. They followed the nurse to another consultation room, this one more clinical, less comfortable. Dr. Patterson was younger than Dr. Morrison, with the energetic efficiency of someone who'd chosen emergency medicine specifically for its pace. Mr. Cole, he shook Nathan's hand, nodded politely at Victoria. Good news. The biopsy came back benign. It's a hamartoma, a benign tumor made up of normal lung tissue. Nothing to worry about. We'll want to monitor it with annual scans, but no treatment necessary. The relief hit Nathan like a physical blow. His knees actually buckled slightly, and he had to grab the back of a chair to steady himself. Benign, he repeated, the word foreign in his mouth. You're sure? Positive. The pathology is clear. You're going to be fine, Mr. Cole. Nathan couldn't speak, couldn't process. 3 hours of imagining Ava's future without him, 3 hours of constructing elaborate plans for her care, 3 hours of absolute terror. And it was benign. He was going to live. He was going to see Ava's first day of school, her first lost tooth, her graduation, her wedding. He was going to be there. He felt Victoria's hand on his shoulder, steadying him. "That's wonderful news," she said to Dr. Patterson, her voice thick with emotion. "Thank you, doctor." They left the hospital together as the sun set over Chicago, painting the sky in shades of amber and rose. Nathan's hands wouldn't stop shaking, relief, adrenaline, the crash after hours of sustained fear. Victoria walked beside him in silence, still carrying her folders, still processing her own diagnosis. At the hospital entrance, they stopped. The valet was bringing cars around. People were rushing in and out, life continuing its relentless forward motion. Nathan knew this was where they'd part ways, two strangers who'd collided in a moment of crisis, who'd held each other through the worst hours of their lives, who'd shared more honesty than most people managed in years of friendship. "I should go," Nathan said. "Mrs. Chen will be wondering." "Nathan," Victoria's voice stopped him. "Thomas saw us together. He'll be watching now, verifying. If he finds out I lied about being married, especially right after getting a cancer diagnosis, he'll use it to destroy me. The board meeting about the merger is in 3 days. If he can prove I fabricated a husband to look stable, I'll be out as CEO by the end of the week." Nathan understood where this was going. "You need me to keep pretending." "I'm not asking you to. I can't ask you to." Victoria closed her eyes. "You just found out you're going to be okay. You have your daughter waiting for you. You have a life to get back to. I have no right to ask for anything more." But Nathan was already thinking it through. 3 days. He could keep up a charade for 3 days, especially now that the crushing weight of his own mortality had been lifted. He could show up at a board meeting if needed, play the supportive husband, give Victoria the armor she needed to get through her merger. "What would you need?" he asked. Victoria's eyes opened, hope and disbelief warring in her expression. "What?" "From a fake husband. For 3 days. What would make it believable?" "Nathan, you don't have to." "I know I don't have to. I'm asking what you need." Victoria studied his face, searching for something, sincerity, maybe, or sanity. Whatever she found made her shoulders drop slightly, some of the rigid control slipping. "The board dinner is tomorrow night," she said quietly. "It's informal, a pre-meeting social event. Thomas will absolutely be there, watching for cracks in my story. If you could attend as my husband, just for a few hours, it would help establish the narrative." She paused. "After that, there's the actual board meeting on Wednesday. You wouldn't need to attend the meeting itself, but arriving and leaving with me would send the right message. And then you're home free," Nathan finished. "Merger approved. Position secure." "Yes." Victoria's voice was small. "And I'd owe you everything." Nathan thought about Ava, about what he'd tell her someday about this strange week. He thought about Sarah, who'd spent her life helping people, who taught him that kindness wasn't a transaction. He thought about the look in Victoria's eyes when Dr. Morrison had said the word cancer, the same look he'd probably had in his own. "Okay," he said. "I'll do it. But I need to be honest with you about something." Victoria tensed. "What?" "I have no idea how to act like the husband of a CEO. I'm a mechanic. I wear work boots and oil-stained jeans. I've never been to a fancy corporate dinner in my life. If you're expecting me to blend in with your world, you're going to be disappointed." To his surprise, Victoria smiled, a real smile this time, reaching her eyes. "I don't need you to blend in. I need you to be exactly who you are. A genuine person, someone real, someone who married me because we fell in love, not because I could advance his career." She paused. "Thomas and his allies are all about appearances and strategy. Having a husband who's so clearly different from that world actually makes the story more believable. No one would think I'd fabricate a blue-collar mechanic as a fake spouse. It's too unexpected." Nathan laughed despite everything. "So you're saying my biggest qualification is that I'm too unlikely to be a lie?" "Essentially, yes." Victoria's smile faded into something more serious. but also because you stayed with me today when you didn't have to, because you held my hand through the worst news of my life, because you're a good person, Nathan Cole, and that's going to come through in everything you do. That's what will make this believable. They exchanged phone numbers, made plans for Victoria to send a car for him tomorrow evening. As they parted ways, Victoria to her sleek black sedan, Nathan to his dusty pickup truck, he felt the surreal weight of what he'd just agreed to settle over him. He drove through Chicago's evening traffic on autopilot, his mind still processing. Benign, cancer, fake marriage, bored dinner. The words tumbled over each other, refusing to form coherent thoughts. When he pulled up outside Mrs. Chen's house, the porch light was on, and he could see Ava through the window, animated and laughing, showing Mrs. Chen something she'd drawn. The sight of her, alive, happy, unaware of how close she'd come to losing him, made Nathan's eyes burn. Mrs. Chen met him at the door, Ava barreling past her to throw herself into Nathan's arms. "Daddy, look what I made!" She thrust a construction paper creation at him, some kind of rainbow dragon with googly eyes and glitter wings. Mrs. Chen said, "It's a masterpiece. Do you think it's a masterpiece?" Nathan buried his face in her hair, breathing in the scent of school glue and strawberry shampoo. "It's definitely a masterpiece, Bug. The best dragon I've ever seen." Mrs. Chen watched him with knowing eyes. She'd been their neighbor for years, had helped Sarah with Ava when Nathan worked late, had been there the night Sarah died. She could read him. "Everything okay?" she asked quietly, while Ava chattered about her day. "Yeah." Nathan met her gaze. "Everything's okay. Better than okay." That night, after Ava was asleep, Nathan sat at his kitchen table with a beer he didn't drink, staring at his phone. Victoria had already texted, "Thank you again for today. Car will pick you up at 6:30 p.m. tomorrow. Dinner at 7. Business casual attire." And Nathan, "I meant what I said. Just be yourself." He typed back, "See you tomorrow." And Victoria, "You're going to beat this. The cancer, the board, all of it." Her response came quickly. "How do you know?" Nathan thought about Sarah, about loss, about the unexpected resilience of the human heart. "Because I've seen what happens when people give up, and I've seen what happens when they fight. You're a fighter, I can tell." 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, "So are you." Nathan set down his phone and looked around his small kitchen. Dishes in the sink, Ava's drawings covering the refrigerator, the coffee maker Sarah had bought their first year of marriage still taking up counter space. This was his life. Small, complicated, filled with ordinary struggles and everyday love. And somehow, for the next 3 days, he was going to step into another life entirely. A life of corporate dinners and power plays, of pretending to be someone's husband, of helping a woman he barely knew fight battles he didn't fully understand. He should have been terrified. Instead, he felt oddly calm. Maybe it was the relief of his benign diagnosis, the euphoria of a death sentence lifted. Maybe it was the sense of purpose, of being needed for something beyond oil changes and tire rotations. Or maybe it was simply that after 3 years of existing in the gray space of grief, of going through motions without meaning, he'd finally found something, someone, worth stepping forward for. Nathan finished his beer, checked on Ava one more time, sprawled across her bed, clutching the stuffed rabbit Sarah had given her, lost in whatever dreams 6-year-olds had, and went to bed. Tomorrow, he'd become Nathan Cole, husband of Victoria Hale, CEO. Tonight, he was just a mechanic who'd gotten impossibly lucky, and a father who'd get to keep his daughter. It would have to be enough. But as he drifted toward sleep, he found himself thinking not about his own relief, but about Victoria sitting alone in whatever pristine apartment a CEO lived in, facing cancer and corporate warfare with no one to hold her hand through the fear. Not alone anymore, he thought, at least not for 3 days. It wasn't much. But sometimes, 3 days of not being alone could change everything. The black sedan arrived at exactly 6:30 p.m., so silent and expensive-looking that Mrs. Chen came to her window to watch. Nathan saw the curtain twitch as he walked down his front steps, wearing the only suit he owned, a navy blue number he'd bought for Sarah's funeral and hadn't touched since. It still smelled faintly of mothballs despite his best efforts with fabric spray. The driver, a young man in a crisp uniform, held the door open with professional neutrality. "Mr. Cole?" Mrs. Hale asked me to collect you. Nathan slid into the back seat, feeling immediately out of place against the leather interior. The car smelled like new money and subtle cologne, nothing like his pickup truck with its permanent scent of motor oil and Ava's forgotten French fries. His phone buzzed as they pulled away from the curb. Victoria's text read, "The restaurant is Everest, very formal. Don't worry about what to order, just follow my lead. Thomas will be watching everything, so we need to look comfortable together. Natural, like we've done this 1,000 times." Nathan typed back with one hand, "Comfortable and natural. Got it. Should I have brought flowers or something?" The response came quickly. "You're sweet to think of it, but no. Just be yourself, that's all I need." The drive took them through downtown Chicago as the city transformed from business district to evening playground. The sedan glided past Nathan's usual world, the dive bars where he sometimes grabbed a beer after work, the corner store where he bought Ava's favorite cereal, the park where Sarah used to take her on Sunday mornings. Each familiar landmark reminded him how far he was traveling, not in miles, but in worlds. Everest occupied the 40th floor of the Chicago Stock Exchange building. The elevator ride alone felt like a journey into another dimension, glass walls revealing the city dropping away beneath them, soft classical music playing, the lighting designed to make everyone look powerful and successful. Nathan caught his reflection and barely recognized himself in the suit, his work-roughened hands carefully scrubbed clean, his usually unruly hair tamed with too much gel. He looked like an imposter. He felt like one too. The elevator doors opened onto a reception area that screamed wealth so loudly it didn't need to say a word. Floor-to-ceiling windows framed the Chicago skyline like a painting, the city lights spreading out in all directions, a constellation of human ambition. Nathan had lived in this city his entire life, but had never seen it from this height, from this angle. Up here, the streets where he worked and lived were invisible, reduced to abstract patterns of light and shadow. "Mr. Cole." The hostess smiled with the kind of practiced warmth that came from dealing with important people all day. "Miss Hale is already seated. This way, please." He followed her through the dining room, acutely aware of eyes turning to track his movement. The other diners radiated wealth and power, designer clothes, expensive watches, the particular confidence that came from never having worried about money. Nathan kept his spine straight, his expression neutral, channeling every ounce of the dignity Sarah had always said he possessed. And then he saw Victoria. She stood as he approached, and Nathan's breath caught. She wore a deep emerald dress that somehow managed to be both elegant and powerful. Her hair swept up to reveal the long line of her neck, diamond earrings catching the candlelight. But it wasn't the clothes or the jewelry that stopped him. It was the expression on her face. Relief, genuine and unguarded, flooded her features when she saw him. She'd been afraid he wouldn't come. "Nathan." She moved around the table, and for a moment they both hesitated, uncertain of the appropriate greeting for fake spouses. Then Victoria solved it by leaning in and kissing his cheek, her hand resting briefly on his arm. "I'm so glad you're here," she murmured, low enough that only he could hear the slight tremor in her voice. "Wouldn't miss it," Nathan said, surprising himself with how much he meant it. They sat, and Nathan became aware of the other people at the table, 4 men and 2 women, all watching with varying degrees of interest and assessment. Thomas Brennan sat directly across from them, his smile sharp as a knife. "Everyone," Victoria said, her voice smooth and controlled, "this is my husband, Nathan. Nathan, these are some of my board members. You remember I mentioned Thomas." "Hard to forget," Nathan said evenly, meeting Thomas's gaze. "Nice to see you again." Thomas's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Indeed. I have to say, Victoria, your marriage came as quite a surprise to all of us. You've been so private about your personal life." "Some things are worth protecting," Victoria said, her hand finding Nathan's on the table. Her fingers were cold despite the warmth of the room. "Nathan values his privacy. We both do." "How did you two meet?" This came from one of the women, late 50s, impeccably dressed, with the sharp eyes of someone who missed nothing. Her name tag read, Margaret Chen, board member. Nathan felt Victoria tense beside him. They hadn't prepared a story. In the rush of agreeing to this charade, they'd forgotten to construct the basic mythology that married couples carried, the narrative of how they'd found each other. "My car broke down," Nathan said, the lie forming naturally. "About a year ago. Victoria's driver pulled over to help, and she got out to make sure I was okay. Most people in expensive cars don't do that. Victoria picked up the thread seamlessly. You were so frustrated, she said, and Nathan heard her finding the truth within the fiction. Everything had gone wrong that day, and your car was just the final straw, but you were kind about it, patient with the tow truck driver even though you were clearly having the worst day. You gave me your card, Nathan continued, building the story. Told me to call if I needed a good mechanic since mine had apparently failed me. I thought that was funny, this CEO handing out business cards on the side of the highway. I called him 3 days later, Victoria said, her voice softening into something almost real. Made up some excuse about my car making a strange noise. Really, I just wanted to see him again. Margaret smiled. That's actually quite romantic. Thomas wasn't buying it. A year ago, you said? Funny, because Victoria, you told me just last month that you hadn't dated anyone seriously in 5 years. The table went quiet. Victoria's hand tightened on Nathan's, her nails digging into his palm. Nathan could feel her scrambling for an explanation, the lie threatening to collapse under its own weight. We kept it quiet, Nathan said before Victoria could respond. My daughter, she's 6. She just lost her mother a couple years before. I wasn't ready to introduce her to someone new, and Victoria understood that. We dated in private, took it slow, got married quietly 6 months ago at City Hall. No announcement, no fuss. Just us and a couple of witnesses. Your daughter, Margaret said gently. That must have been difficult, losing her mother so young. It was. Nathan didn't have to fake the emotion in his voice. Sarah, my first wife, she died suddenly. Aneurysm. Ava was only 3. For a long time, I didn't think I could love anyone again. Didn't want to, really. But Victoria, he looked at her and found it surprisingly easy to put real feeling into his words. She didn't try to replace Sarah. She just showed up, quietly, consistently. She learned what kind of juice boxes Ava liked. She asked about my work. She made space for grief instead of trying to fix it. Victoria's eyes glistened. She blinked rapidly, clearing the tears before they could fall. Nathan taught me that love doesn't have to be loud to be real, she said, her voice thick. That sometimes the most powerful thing you can do is just be present. The moment hung between them, loaded with an intimacy that felt too genuine for a lie. Nathan realized with a start that they weren't really acting anymore. They were describing something that had actually happened in that hospital corridor. A recognition between two lonely people that transcended their circumstances. Thomas cleared his throat, breaking the spell. Well, how convenient that this marriage provided such perfect timing for your current situation. Thomas, Margaret said sharply, that's inappropriate. Is it? Thomas leaned forward. Victoria announces a significant health issue, suddenly produces a husband no one knew existed, right before a crucial merger vote. Forgive me for being skeptical. My health is being managed, Victoria said, ice in her voice now. And my marriage is none of the board's business unless you'd like me to start questioning your personal life, Thomas. How is your third wife, by the way? Still 20 years younger than you? Someone at the table snorted into their wine. Thomas's face flushed an ugly red. Before he could respond, their waiter arrived with menus, and the tension diffused into the safer territory of food selection. Nathan stared at the menu with growing alarm. Everything was in French. There were no prices listed, and the descriptions meant nothing to him. Duck confit with cherry gastrique, lobster medallions with saffron foam. He might as well have been reading ancient Greek. Victoria leaned close, her lips nearly brushing his ear. Order whatever sounds interesting. If you don't recognize something, just ask me. Don't let them intimidate you. But Nathan felt intimidated anyway. This wasn't his world. These weren't his people. He was a mechanic from Bridgeport playing dress-up in a 5-star restaurant, lying to powerful people about a marriage that didn't exist, all to help a woman he'd known for less than 24 hours. The waiter arrived at their table. Have we decided? Victoria ordered something elaborate that Nathan didn't catch. When the waiter turned to him expectantly, Nathan's mind went blank. I'll have the steak, he said finally, pointing to one of the few words he recognized. Medium rare. Excellent choice, sir. The Wagyu is exceptional tonight. And to start, Nathan had no idea what half the appetizers were. Whatever my wife is having. Victoria shot him a quick, grateful look. The The waiter nodded and moved on, and Nathan breathed a silent sigh of relief. Conversation flowed around him as drinks arrived. The board members discussed the Lakeside merger in terms Nathan barely followed. Capital investments, zoning complications, projected ROI. He stayed quiet, listening, trying to understand the world Victoria inhabited. She was brilliant, he realized. She parried their questions with precision, defended her decisions with data and vision, held her ground against challenges without ever raising her voice. She commanded respect not through aggression, but through competence, and Nathan found himself genuinely impressed. "So Nathan," one of the men said, Robert something, CFO, according to his earlier introduction, "what do you think about the Lakeside project? Victoria must have discussed it at home." It was a trap, obviously, a test to see if Nathan actually knew anything about Victoria's work, if they actually talked like married couples did. "I think," Nathan said carefully, "that Victoria doesn't bring work home if she can help it. When we're together, we talk about other things, real things, not spreadsheets and zoning laws." "But surely you have an opinion on such a major undertaking." "My opinion is that Victoria knows what she's doing," Nathan interrupted. "I trust her judgment. That's what marriage means, isn't it? Trusting your partner to be good at what they're good at?" Margaret smiled approvingly. Victoria's hand squeezed his under the table, gratitude and warning in equal measure. Thomas wasn't done. "It's just so fascinating," he said, swirling his scotch. "This whirlwind romance, a CEO and a mechanic. It's very unexpected." "Life usually is," Nathan replied. "I didn't expect to lose my wife at 32, didn't expect to be a single father, didn't expect to meet someone who understood what that loss felt like." He looked at Thomas directly. "Sometimes the most important things happen when you're not planning for them." How philosophical. Thomas's tone dripped condescension. "Tell me, do you ever feel out of place in Victoria's world?" "Every single day," Nathan said honestly. "But that's not necessarily bad. Victoria spends all her time with people like you, people who speak the same language, play the same games, live in the same bubble. Sometimes she needs someone who sees the world differently, who reminds her there's life outside of boardrooms and mergers." "How quaint," Thomas said. The simple mechanic keeping the high-powered CEO grounded. Nathan felt anger flare hot in his chest, but before he could respond, Victoria spoke. "Nathan's not simple," she said, her voice quiet but deadly. "He runs his own business, employs 3 people, raised a daughter alone through grief that would have destroyed most men. He builds things, fixes things, solves complex problems every single day." She turned to look at Thomas. "And unlike some people at this table, he doesn't need to tear others down to feel important." The silence that followed was arctic. Margaret coughed into her napkin. Robert suddenly became very interested in the wine list. Thomas opened his mouth, closed it, then smiled with the forced grace of someone who'd been outmaneuvered. "Of course. I meant no offense." "Of course you didn't," Victoria said sweetly. The food arrived, breaking the tension. Nathan's steak was perfectly cooked, accompanied by vegetables he couldn't name but tasted incredible. He ate slowly, watching Victoria navigate the social dynamics of the table with the skill of someone who'd been doing it for years. She was magnificent, graceful, and dangerous, capable of charm and brutality in equal measure. But he also saw the cracks. The way her hand trembled slightly when she reached for her water glass. The shadow that crossed her face when Margaret mentioned someone's upcoming vacation. The unspoken reminder that Victoria would be spending her summer in radiation treatment. The exhaustion lurking behind her composed expression. Halfway through the meal, Victoria excused herself to the restroom. Nathan watched her go, then found Thomas watching him with predatory interest. "You're good," Thomas said once Victoria was out of earshot. "Very convincing." Nathan met his stare. "I'm not performing." "Everyone's performing. The question is why? What's in this for you?" Thomas leaned forward. "A mechanic doesn't marry a CEO out of love. Not in the real world. So what is it? Money? Security for your daughter? Victoria's clearly desperate enough to—" "You don't know anything about her," Nathan interrupted, his voice low and hard. "Or me, or what we are to each other." "Don't I?" Thomas smiled. "I know Victoria's scared. I know she's facing cancer alone, or she was until you conveniently appeared. I know she's about to push through the biggest deal of her career while dealing with treatment that will leave her weak and vulnerable. And I know that people do desperate things when they're cornered. Nathan felt rage building in his chest, not just at Thomas's implications, but at the kernel of truth within them. He was part of Victoria's desperation, wasn't he? Part of her performance, her survival strategy. But he was also remembering the look in her eyes when the doctor said, malignancy. The way her hand had trembled in his, the loneliness in her voice when she'd said, if I don't recover, I'll do it alone. You're right about one thing, Nathan said quietly. Victoria is facing something terrible, but she's not alone. Not anymore. Whether that makes sense to you or fits your worldview doesn't really matter to me. How noble, Thomas said. The white knight mechanic, saving the damsel CEO. She doesn't need saving. She needs support. There's a difference. Victoria returned before Thomas could respond, sliding back into her seat with a smile that didn't quite reach her eyes. What did I miss? Just getting to know your husband, Thomas said smoothly. Fascinating man. The rest of the dinner passed in a blur of conversation and carefully navigated social landmines. Nathan learned more about corporate politics in 2 hours than he'd ever wanted to know. The subtle alliances, the unspoken rivalries, the way power moved through rooms like an invisible current. He also learned that Victoria had enemies beyond Thomas, people who smiled to her face while sharpening knives behind her back. By the time dessert arrived, some elaborate chocolate construction that looked more like art than food, Nathan was exhausted from the performance, from being watched, assessed, judged, from second-guessing every word, every gesture, terrified of being the crack that brought Victoria's world crashing down. Finally, mercifully, the dinner ended. They said their goodbyes, Victoria's hand resting in the crook of Nathan's arm like they'd done this 1,000 times. In the elevator ride down, they stood in silence, the weight of the evening pressing down on them. When they reached the street, Victoria's car was waiting, but she didn't immediately get in. Instead, she turned to Nathan, and he saw how much the evening had cost her. The armor had cracks now, exhaustion seeping through. Thank you, she said. I know that was difficult. Thomas is a piece of work, Nathan said. He smells blood in the water. He knows I'm vulnerable right now. Victoria closed her eyes briefly. Did he say anything to you? When I left? Nathan considered lying, protecting her from Thomas's implications. But something about the way Victoria looked at him, open, trusting, desperate for honesty, made him tell the truth. He thinks I'm using you, that there's an angle, something I'm getting out of this fake marriage. Victoria's face went carefully blank. Are you? Is there something you want, Nathan? We never discussed, I never asked, no. The word came out more forcefully than he intended. I don't want anything. I'm doing this because it's the right thing to do, because you needed help, and I could give it. That's all. Something shifted in Victoria's expression, relief, gratitude, something deeper that Nathan couldn't quite name. Most people don't work that way. In my world, everything's transactional. Every favor has a price tag. I'm not from your world, Nathan reminded her. No. Victoria smiled sadly. You're not, and right now I'm very grateful for that. She paused. The board meeting is Wednesday at 10. I'll have the car pick you up at 9:30. You just need to arrive with me, maybe wait in the lobby during the meeting itself. Thomas and the others will see us together, see that I'm stable and supported. After the vote, we can... She hesitated. End this. Go back to our normal lives. Wednesday. 2 more days of pretending. 2 more days of being someone he wasn't, living in a world that didn't fit him. Okay, Nathan said. Wednesday. They stood there for a moment, 2 people suspended between truth and fiction, between the roles they were playing and the reality of their separate, lonely lives. The city moved around them, taxis honking, people laughing, the endless motion of Chicago at night. But in that moment, they existed in a bubble of stillness. Nathan, Victoria said suddenly, that story you told, about how we met, the broken-down car, what about it? It was good, believable. She looked at him curiously. But I was wondering, if we had met that way, if you had seen me on the side of the road, would you have actually stopped? Nathan thought about that. Yeah, he said. I would have. Not because you're a CEO or because you're beautiful, though you are, but because Sarah taught me that stopping for people matters, that small acts of kindness add up to something bigger. He met Victoria's eyes. Would you have gotten out of the car to check on a stranger? Victoria was quiet for a long moment. I don't know, she admitted. The old me, the one from a week ago? Probably not. I would have told my driver to call roadside assistance and moved on. I had places to be, deals to close. She paused. But maybe that's changing. Cancer has a way of changing perspectives, Nathan said quietly. It's not just the cancer. Victoria's voice dropped. It's you. The way you just showed up, no questions, no expectations. The way you sat through that dinner and defended me against Thomas. The way you're looking at me right now like I'm a person instead of a position. She laughed softly, sadly. I've spent 20 years building a career, and I can't remember the last time someone just looked at me and saw Victoria instead of the CEO. Nathan didn't know what to say to that. The vulnerability in her voice made his chest ache. I should go, Victoria said, breaking the moment. You have work tomorrow, and I'm sure your daughter is waiting. Yeah. Nathan checked his phone, 9:47 p.m. Mrs. Chen had texted twice asking if he was okay. Ava will be asleep by now, but I like to check on her before I go to bed. She's lucky to have you. I'm lucky to have her. Nathan hesitated, then added, if you need anything before Wednesday, if you're scared or just want to talk, you can call me. Anytime. Victoria's eyes widened slightly. You mean that? I wouldn't say it if I didn't. She studied his face like she was memorizing it, like she was trying to understand how someone like him existed in her world of transactions and strategies. I might take you up on that. Please do. Victoria got into her car, and Nathan watched it pull away into traffic, the taillights disappearing into the river of red streaming through downtown. He stood there for a moment, feeling the strangeness of the evening settle over him like fog. In the span of 48 hours, he'd gone from grieving mechanic waiting for potentially devastating medical news to fake husband of one of Chicago's most powerful CEOs. His phone buzzed. Victoria, you were perfect tonight. Thank you for defending me against Thomas. And thank you for offering to talk. It means more than you know. Nathan typed back. You defended yourself pretty well. I just backed you up. Still, having backup is new for me. Nathan considered his response carefully. Get used to it, at least for the next 2 days. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, 2 days. Right. Good night, Nathan. Good night, Victoria. The next morning, Nathan woke to Ava jumping on his bed at 6:30 a.m., her usual wake-up strategy. Daddy, Mrs. Chen said you went to a fancy dinner. Did you wear your suit? Did you eat snails? Emma's dad went to France and he said they eat snails there and it's fancy. Nathan groaned, pulling a pillow over his face. Too early, Bug, and no snails, just steak. Boring, Ava bounced higher. Was there dessert? I bet there was dessert. Was it chocolate? Yes, chocolate. Very fancy chocolate. Can we have fancy chocolate for breakfast? How about fancy cereal? Nathan sat up, catching Ava mid-bounce and pulling her into a hug. She smelled like sleep and strawberry shampoo. And then you need to get ready for school. Over breakfast, decidedly unfancy Cheerios, Ava chattered about her upcoming school art show, about her friend Emma's birthday party next weekend, about a book her teacher was reading to the class. Nathan listened with half his attention, the other half still processing the previous night. The weight of the lie he was maintaining felt heavier in the morning light, more complicated. At work, his assistant Danny noticed immediately that something was off. Boss, you okay? You've been staring at that transmission for 10 minutes without touching it. Nathan blinked, refocusing on the engine in front of him. Yeah, sorry, just distracted. Late night? Danny grinned. Mrs. Chen mentioned she saw you getting into some fancy car. You holding out on us? Got a secret girlfriend? Nathan thought about Victoria, about the way she'd looked at him across the dinner table, the vulnerability in her voice when she'd thanked him, the weight of her hand in his. Something like that, he said vaguely. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Victoria. Thomas just called. He's digging into our story. Asked my assistant when exactly I got married, whether there were any photos, where we went on our honeymoon. My assistant said I keep my personal life private, but he's not going to stop. Nathan wiped his hands on a rag and stepped outside to call her. She answered on the first ring. Hi. Are you okay? No? Victoria's voice was tight with stress. Thomas is like a dog with a bone. He knows something's off. He just can't prove it yet. And the merger vote is tomorrow. If he finds a crack in our story before then, he won't, Nathan said with more confidence than he felt. We've got this. Our story is solid. Is it? We have no photos together, no proof of a wedding, no shared history. If he pushes hard enough, then we give him proof, Nathan interrupted. Silence. Then, what do you mean? Photos. We take some photos together, nothing elaborate, just normal couple stuff. Enough to make it look real if anyone asks. Nathan, I can't ask you to... You're not asking. I'm offering. When do you have time today? More silence as Victoria considered. I have a break between meetings at 2. But Nathan, this is getting complicated. Maybe we should just tell the truth, take the hit, and let Thomas win? Let all your work on the Lakeside merger fall apart? Nathan shook his head even though she couldn't see it. No. We finish what we started. 2 o'clock, you said. Where should we meet? Victoria gave him the address of a coffee shop near her office. Nathan agreed and hung up, then stared at his phone, wondering what exactly he'd just committed to. More lies, more performance, deeper into a deception that was starting to feel less like helping and more like something else entirely. At 2 o'clock, Nathan found Victoria at a corner table in the coffee shop, looking exhausted and elegant in a cream-colored blazer. She had 2 cups of coffee waiting, and when she saw him, her expression softened into something that looked almost like relief. You came, she said. Said I would. They spent the next hour manufacturing a relationship history. Victoria's phone came out, and they took photos. Standing close together by the window, laughing at something on Nathan's phone screen, Victoria's head resting on his shoulder in a moment of manufactured intimacy. To anyone watching, they looked like a couple stealing a quiet moment between busy schedules. But Nathan was hyper-aware of every touch, every smile, every moment where the acting felt too real. Victoria's perfume was subtle and expensive. Her laugh, when he made an unintentionally awkward joke, was genuine and surprised, like she didn't laugh often. The way she leaned into him for one photo felt natural, comfortable, like they'd done this before. This is weird, Victoria said after they'd taken a dozen photos. Manufacturing memories. Yeah. Nathan looked at the images on her phone. Visual evidence of a relationship that didn't exist. They looked happy in the photos. Comfortable. Real. But it'll work. If Thomas asks for proof, you've got it. Victoria scrolled through the images, her expression unreadable. We look good together, she said quietly. In the photos, I mean. We look right. Nathan didn't know how to respond to that. He was saved by Victoria's assistant calling, emergency meeting, crisis with a contractor. She needed to get back immediately. They parted ways on the street corner, and Nathan watched her disappear into the revolving door of her office building, back into the world of power and pressure that he couldn't fully understand. That night, Ava had a nightmare. Nathan woke to her crying, stumbled into her room and found her curled into a ball, sobbing about monsters and mothers who disappeared. Shh, Bug, it's okay, he whispered, gathering her into his arms. It was just a dream. You're safe. I dreamed Mommy came back. Ava hiccuped against his shoulder. But then she disappeared again. She kept disappearing every time I tried to hug her. Nathan's heart broke. I know, baby. I know you miss her. Do you miss her too, Daddy? Every single day. They sat together in the dark, Nathan rocking Ava gently while she cried herself out. Eventually her breathing evened and she drifted back to sleep, but Nathan stayed, watching her in the dim glow of her nightlight. His phone buzzed. Victoria. Can't sleep. Keep thinking about the vote tomorrow. Wondering if I'm strong enough to face treatment if the merger falls through. Wondering if any of this matters. Nathan typed one-handed, careful not to disturb Ava. It matters. You matter. And you're stronger than you think. How do you know? Because weak people don't build what you've built. Don't fight the way you fight. You're going to beat this, Victoria. The cancer, the board, all of it. I wish I had your certainty. Borrow mine until you find your own. A long pause. Then, thank you for being there tonight, for the photos, for all of it. I know this isn't your problem, but you keep showing up anyway. Nathan looked down at Ava, at her tear-stained face peaceful in sleep. Sometimes showing up is the only thing that matters. Is your daughter okay? I saw you went offline earlier. Bad dream about her mom. She's sleeping now. I'm sorry. That must be hard. For both of you. It is. But we're managing. Nathan paused, then added, get some sleep if you can. Tomorrow's a big day. Tomorrow I find out if my career survives or if Thomas Brennan gets everything he's wanted for 5 years. Tomorrow, you show them exactly who Victoria Hale is. And I'll be right there with you. The next morning arrived gray and cold, typical March in Chicago. Nathan dressed in his suit again, this time without the mothball smell, and tried not to think about how his hands were shaking as he knotted his tie. The car arrived at exactly 9:30. Victoria was already inside, dressed in a black power suit that made her look like she could conquer nations. But her eyes gave her away, fear lurking behind the professional mask. Ready? She asked as Nathan slid in beside her. As I'll ever be. They rode in silence through morning traffic. Nathan could feel the tension radiating off Victoria, could see her hands clasped tight in her lap, knuckles white. Without thinking, he reached over and covered her hands with his. You've got this, he said quietly. Victoria's fingers turned and laced through his. I'm terrified. I know, but you're also brilliant, and you've worked too hard to let Thomas Brennan take this from you. She held his hand the entire ride to her office building. When they pulled up to the entrance, Nathan saw other board members arriving, saw Thomas getting out of his own car and scanning the area with predatory focus. His eyes landed on Nathan and Victoria's joined hands, and something flickered across his face. Frustration, calculation, defeat. They walked into the building together, and Nathan felt every eye in the lobby tracking their movement. Victoria's assistant met them by the elevators with a stack of folders and a worried expression. The board is assembling now, she told Victoria. Thomas has been making calls all morning. I think he's planning something. Let him plan, Victoria said, her voice steady despite the fear Nathan could feel in her trembling hand. I'm ready for whatever he has. At the elevator bank, Victoria turned to Nathan. You can wait in my office. There's coffee, magazines. The meeting shouldn't take more than 2 hours. I'll be here when you're done, Nathan promised. Victoria looked at him for a long moment, something unreadable in her expression. Then she leaned in and kissed his cheek, slowly, deliberately, clearly aware of all the eyes watching them. Thank you, she whispered against his ear, for everything. Then she was gone, disappearing into the elevator with her assistant and the stack of folders that represented months of work. Nathan stood there, feeling the phantom warmth of her lips on his cheek, wondering when exactly this had stopped feeling like an act and started feeling like something real. Victoria's office occupied the corner of the 32nd floor, all glass and steel and carefully curated power. Nathan stood at the windows, watching the city sprawl below, while trying not to think about what was happening 12 floors above him in the boardroom. The coffee Victoria's assistant had brought him sat untouched on the desk, growing cold. He checked his phone. 10:47 a.m. The meeting had been going for 47 minutes. His phone buzzed with a text from Danny at the shop. Mrs. Patterson's Honda is making that noise again. Want me to take another look at the exhaust system? Nathan typed back instructions, grateful for the distraction. This was his real world. Broken transmissions and cranky customers, oil changes and tire rotations. Not boardrooms and mergers, not corporate warfare played out in conference rooms 32 floors above the streets where actual life happened. But even as he tried to focus on work, his mind kept drifting back to Victoria. The way her hand had trembled in his during the car ride. The fear in her eyes that she'd tried so hard to hide. The weight of everything riding on the next hour. Her career, her company. The merger that represented years of strategic planning. And underneath it all, the cancer. The diagnosis that hung over everything like a shadow. The treatment that would start as soon as this merger closed. The radiation that would leave her exhausted and sick while trying to maintain the iron control her position demanded. Nathan wondered, not for the first time, how she'd done it all alone for so long. The office door opened. Nathan turned, expecting Victoria's assistant, but instead found Margaret Chen, the board member from the dinner. She looked surprised to see him. "Mr. Cole, I didn't realize you were still here." "Waiting for Victoria," Nathan said. "The meeting's still going?" "Yes, and it's heated." Margaret closed the door behind her and studied Nathan with the same sharp assessment she'd used at dinner. "Thomas is pushing hard against the merger, citing concerns about Victoria's health, her judgment, whether she can handle the stress of such a large expansion while dealing with cancer treatment." Nathan felt anger flare in his chest. "That's not legal, is it? Discriminating against her because of a medical condition?" "It's not overt discrimination. He's framing it as legitimate concern for the company's well-being, asking whether it's responsible to approve such a significant deal when our CEO might need to step back for treatment." Margaret's expression was carefully neutral. "Some board members are listening." "But that's exactly what he wanted," Nathan said, understanding clicking into place. "This is why he was circling her at the hospital. He wanted her to look weak, isolated, unstable, so he could use it against her when it mattered most." "Thomas is very good at identifying weakness and exploiting it," Margaret agreed. "Which is why I came to find you, actually. I wanted to ask you something, and I'd appreciate an honest answer." Nathan tensed. "Okay. Are you really married to Victoria?" The question hung in the air between them. Nathan could lie, should lie, continue the performance they'd started. But something about Margaret's directness, the way she was looking at him with more curiosity than judgment, made him hesitate. "Why are you asking?" "Because Thomas has been insinuating all morning that your marriage is fabricated, that Victoria produced a convenient husband right when she needed one to appear stable and supported. He can't prove it, but the accusation alone is doing damage." Margaret paused. "And because I've known Victoria for 10 years, and in all that time I've never seen her mention anyone, never seen her show up to an event with a date, never heard her talk about her personal life at all. Then suddenly she's married to someone completely outside her world? It's unusual." Nathan thought about his options. He could maintain the lie, hope Margaret believed him, or he could tell the truth to someone who might actually help Victoria instead of using the information to destroy her. He chose a middle path. "Does it matter?" Nathan asked. "Whether we got married last week or 6 months ago, whether we met on the highway or in a hospital corridor, does any of that change the fact that Victoria is brilliant at her job? That she's worked harder than anyone else in that boardroom? That she deserves to see this merger through?" Margaret smiled slightly. "No, it doesn't. But it might matter to the other board members if Thomas can prove she lied." "He can't prove anything," Nathan said with more confidence than he felt. "Because Victoria and I are together. However we got here, whatever our story is, I'm standing in her office right now waiting for her. I sat through that dinner. I'm showing up. That's real, even if—" He trailed off, not sure how to finish. "Even if the paperwork doesn't exist?" Margaret supplied gently. Nathan met her gaze. "I care about her. That's not fake. I want her to succeed, to beat this cancer, to prove Thomas Brennan wrong about everything. Is that enough?" Margaret considered him for a long moment. "You know what I think, Mr. Cole? I think Victoria is very lucky to have found you, regardless of how it happened. And I think Thomas is going to lose this fight, because he's underestimated something crucial." "What's that?" "He assumed Victoria's strength came from being alone, from not needing anyone. But real strength isn't about isolation. It's about knowing when to accept help." Margaret moved toward the door, then paused. "I should get back to the meeting, but for what it's worth, I'm voting for the merger. Victoria has earned that much." She left, and Nathan was alone again with his cold coffee and churning thoughts. He pulled out his phone and scrolled through the photos from yesterday. Him and Victoria laughing, standing close, looking for all the world like a couple who belonged together. The scary thing was how easy it had been, how natural it felt to stand beside her, to defend her, to want good things for her. Somewhere in the past 3 days, Victoria had stopped being a stranger he was helping and become someone he genuinely cared about, which was terrifying, because in a few hours this would all be over. The merger would pass or fail, their charade would end, and they'd return to their separate lives. Victoria to her world of power and success, Nathan to his garage and his daughter and his small, ordinary existence. The thought left him feeling hollowed out in a way he didn't want to examine too closely. His phone buzzed. "Victoria. Still going. Thomas is relentless, but I think we have the votes. Maybe another 30 minutes. Nathan, you're doing great. Don't let him get to you. Victoria, he's questioning my judgment, implying I'm not thinking clearly because of the diagnosis, suggesting the board should table the merger until after my treatment. Nathan, don't you dare let him table it. This is your deal, your vision, your company. Victoria, I'm trying, but I'm so tired, Nathan. Tired of fighting, tired of proving myself, tired of being alone in this. Nathan stared at those last words, feeling something crack open in his chest. You're not alone. I'm right downstairs. And when this meeting is over, win or lose, I'll still be here. 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. Finally, that helps more than you know. The minutes crawled by. Nathan paced Victoria's office, studying the carefully chosen art on her walls, the awards and recognitions displayed with subtle pride. There were no personal photos, he noticed. No family pictures, no vacation snapshots, no evidence of a life beyond work. Just achievement after achievement, each one a brick in the wall she'd built between herself and the world. He thought about his own life, the refrigerator covered with Ava's drawings, the photos of Sarah still displayed throughout the house, the evidence of love and loss and messy human connection everywhere. They were such different worlds, his and Victoria's, different values, different measures of success. But in that hospital corridor, none of those differences had mattered. They'd just been 2 terrified people, and that had been enough. The office door burst open. Victoria's assistant rushed in, her face flushed with excitement. Mr. Cole, it's done. The vote just finished. The merger passed 11-3. Miss Hale is on her way down. Relief flooded through Nathan so powerfully it left him dizzy. She won? She won. The assistant was beaming. Thomas tried everything, but in the end the numbers didn't lie. The Lakeside merger is happening. Nathan barely had time to process this before Victoria appeared in the doorway. She looked shell-shocked. Her professional composure cracked wide open. Their eyes met across the office, and Nathan saw everything in her expression. Triumph, relief, exhaustion, and something else. Something vulnerable and raw. We did it, she said, her voice breaking slightly. We actually did it. Nathan crossed the office in 3 strides and pulled her into a hug. Victoria went rigid for a moment, clearly unused to such direct physical comfort, then melted against him with a sound that might have been a laugh or a sob. Her arms wrapped around his waist, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. You did it, Nathan corrected, his voice rough. This was all you, Victoria. Your work, your vision. I couldn't have done it without you. Victoria's words were muffled against his shoulder. If Thomas had been able to prove I was lying about us, if he'd made the board think I was desperate and unstable, but he didn't, because we didn't give him anything to use. Victoria pulled back slightly, looking up at him with red-rimmed eyes that sparkled with unshed tears. Margaret voted for the merger. She told me afterward that she'd spoken with you, that you'd impressed her. What did she say? That anyone who'd show up the way you have is either genuinely in love or the best actor she's ever met. Victoria's smile was tremulous. I didn't tell her which one you are. Nathan's heart hammered against his ribs. The question hung between them, loaded with implications neither of them seemed ready to address. He was saved from responding by Victoria's assistant, appearing with a bottle of champagne and 2 glasses. The team wants to celebrate, she announced. Everyone's gathering in the conference room. Victoria straightened, her CEO mask sliding back into place with visible effort. She wiped her eyes, smoothed her jacket, transformed herself back into the powerful woman who just won the biggest deal of her career. Tell them I'll be there in 5 minutes, she said. The assistant left, and Victoria turned back to Nathan. The vulnerability was still there in her eyes, but tempered now by the reality of what came next. This is it, she said quietly. The merger's approved. Thomas is defeated. You don't have to pretend anymore. Nathan felt something twist in his chest. Right. Our deal is done. Yes. Victoria looked away, focusing on the city beyond her windows. You've been incredibly generous with your time. I know these past few days have been... I don't regret them, Nathan interrupted. Any of it. Victoria's gaze snapped back to him. You don't? No. You needed help, and I was able to give it. That's... He searched for words. That's important. It matters. It does. Victoria's voice was soft. You matter, Nathan. I want you to know that. These past few days, getting to know you, seeing how you are with people, it's reminded me that there's more to life than board meetings and mergers. And you've reminded me that I'm capable of more than I thought, Nathan admitted. That I can step outside my comfort zone. That I can show up for people, even when it's hard. They stood there, two people who'd collided by accident and ended up saving each other in ways neither had expected. The office felt too small suddenly, too intimate, the air between them charged with everything they weren't saying. Victoria's phone buzzed insistently. She glanced at it and sighed. I need to go celebrate with my team. It would look strange if I didn't. Of course, go. Nathan managed to smile. Congratulations, Victoria. You earned this. Will you? Victoria hesitated. Will you stay? Just for a little while? I know you need to get back to work, to your daughter, but I'd like you to be part of the celebration. You're as responsible for this victory as anyone. Nathan knew he should leave, should return to his real life, create distance before this temporary connection became something more complicated. But the hope in Victoria's eyes, the way she was looking at him like he was something precious, made the words die in his throat. Okay, he said. I'll stay. The celebration in the conference room was already in full swing. Victoria's entire executive team had gathered, sharp-suited men and women who ran departments and managed millions, all of them toasting their CEO with genuine affection and respect. Nathan stood awkwardly near the windows, accepting a glass of champagne he didn't really want, feeling profoundly out of place. Victoria worked the room with practiced grace, accepting congratulations and deflecting praise to her team. But Nathan noticed how often her eyes found his across the crowd, how she seemed to relax slightly whenever their gazes met. So, you're the mysterious husband. A woman appeared at Nathan's elbow, late 30s, with the friendly competence of someone who kept complex systems running smoothly. I'm Jennifer, Victoria's CFO. We've all been dying to meet you. Nathan, he shook her hand, though I'm not that mysterious. You are to us. Victoria never talks about her personal life, never. And suddenly she's married? Jennifer's smile was warm but curious. It's wonderful, don't get me wrong. We've all worried about her working too hard, never taking time for herself. But it's definitely a surprise. Sometimes the best things are surprises, Nathan said diplomatically. True. Jennifer studied him with the same sharp assessment he'd gotten from Margaret. Can I ask you something? And feel free to tell me it's none of my business. Sure. Does Victoria seem okay to you? Health-wise, I mean. She's been so strong through all of this, the merger stress, the diagnosis, but I worry she's not letting anyone see how scared she really is. Nathan thought about Victoria's trembling hands in the car, the fear in her eyes when the doctor said malignancy, the exhaustion in her voice when she texted late at night. She's terrified, he said honestly, but she's also strong, stronger than she probably realizes. She's lucky to have you supporting her through this. The cancer treatment, that's going to be rough. She'll need someone. The words hit Nathan like a punch, because in a few hours, Victoria wouldn't have someone. Their arrangement would end, and she'd face surgery and radiation alone, exactly as she'd feared. The thought made him feel physically ill if she relaxed. She caught him watching. If she relaxed, she caught him watching and smiled, a real smile, unguarded and genuine. Nathan's phone buzzed. Mrs. Chen. Ava's school called. She's running a fever. Not serious, but they want her picked up. I can get her if you're still tied up. Nathan's stomach dropped. Ava. His real life, his real responsibility, asserting itself. He texted back. I'll get her. Be there in 30 minutes. He made his way across the conference room to Victoria, who was deep in conversation with two board members. She saw him approaching and excused herself, the smile sliding off her face as she read his expression. What's wrong? Ava's sick. I need to pick her up from school. Nathan felt torn between his daughter and this woman who'd become unexpectedly important. I'm sorry, I have to go. Of course. Your daughter comes first. Victoria's disappointment was visible but quickly controlled. Thank you for being here. For everything. They stood there awkwardly, aware of all the eyes watching them, unsure of the appropriate goodbye for fake spouses who'd become something more than strangers. Victoria solved it by leaning in and kissing his cheek, her hand resting briefly on his arm. "Drive safely," she murmured. "And I hope Ava feels better soon." "Thanks." Nathan hesitated, then added quietly, "When does your surgery schedule?" Victoria's eyes widened slightly. Surprised he remembered. Surprised he cared. "Next Tuesday." Dr. Morrison's office called this morning with the date. "Tuesday," Nathan calculated quickly. "That's 6 days from now." "Yes." Victoria's voice dropped. "I'll be fine. It's outpatient, relatively minor. Will someone be there with you to drive you home after?" Victoria looked away. "I'll arrange for car service." Victoria, "Nathan, you've done more than enough. I can't ask you to—" "You're not asking. I'm offering." Nathan kept his voice low, conscious of the people around them. "Let me be there. Please." Victoria's composure cracked just for a moment. "Why? Our deal is done. You don't owe me anything. This isn't about owing, it's about—" Nathan struggled to articulate something he barely understood himself. "It's about not wanting you to face this alone. About actually caring what happens to you." "You barely know me," Victoria whispered. "I know enough." Nathan held her gaze. "I know you're brave and brilliant and terrified. I know you've spent your whole life proving you don't need anyone, but that doesn't mean you should have to do this alone. I know that when you got that diagnosis, the look in your eyes—" His voice roughened. "I never want to see that look again. Not if I can help prevent it." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. She blinked them back furiously, hyper-aware of her team watching. "This is supposed to be over," she said, but it sounded more like a question. "Maybe it doesn't have to be." The words hung between them, transforming everything. This wasn't about board meetings or mergers anymore. This was about two people who'd found each other in the worst possible circumstances and discovered something neither had been looking for. Nathan's phone buzzed again. The school, this time, asking about his ETA. "I really have to go," he said reluctantly. "I know." Victoria straightened, pulling herself together. "Go take care of your daughter. We'll talk later." "Yeah, later." Nathan left, acutely aware of Victoria watching him go, of the weight of everything unsaid between them. The elevator ride down felt like traveling between worlds, from Victoria's realm of power and success to his own reality of sick daughters and garage work and ordinary struggles. He picked up Ava from school and found her miserable, but not seriously ill, just a mild fever and upset stomach. Mrs. Chen helped him get her settled at home with juice and crackers, then left them alone. Ava curled up on the couch with her favorite blanket and immediately fell asleep. Nathan sat beside her, one hand resting on her warm forehead, his mind churning. The past 3 days felt surreal now, like something that had happened to someone else. Had he really stood in a 5-star restaurant pretending to be a CEO's husband? Really hugged Victoria in her office while she cried with relief? His phone buzzed. "Victoria. How's Ava?" "Nathan. Mild fever. Stomach bug probably. She'll be fine." "Victoria. Good. I'm glad she has you to take care of her." Nathan stared at that message, thinking about care and responsibility and the different forms love could take. He thought about Ava, about how fiercely he protected her, how every decision he made filtered through the question of what would be best for her. And he thought about Victoria, facing cancer and recovery alone, and felt something shift in his understanding of what he wanted. He typed, "I meant what I said about the surgery. I want to be there." The response took longer this time. When it came, Nathan's chest tightened. "Why are you doing this, Nathan? Really? You've already helped me more than anyone ever has. You don't have to keep showing up." Nathan looked at Ava, at her peaceful sleeping face, thought about Sarah and loss, and the unexpected ways people could matter. Because 3 days ago, I thought I was dying. I thought about Ava growing up alone, and it broke my heart. Then I met you, and you were facing the same fear, not of dying, but of living alone, of fighting alone. And I realized that sometimes the cruelest thing isn't death. It's facing life without anyone who cares." He paused, then added, "You cared about my daughter. You asked about her, looked at her picture with kindness. That mattered. Now I care about you, And I don't want you to be alone when you're scared. 3 dots appeared and disappeared several times. Finally, I don't know what to do with that. You don't have to do anything. Just let me show up. That's all. More dots? Then, okay. Thank you. Nathan set down his phone and leaned back against the couch, Ava's warm weight against his side, wondering what exactly he'd just committed to. The practical part of his brain, the part that had learned caution through loss and single parenthood, was screaming warnings. Don't get attached. Don't complicate your life. Don't risk Ava's stability for a woman you barely know. But another part, quieter but more insistent, whispered different truths. That showing up mattered. That caring for people, even when it was inconvenient or complicated, was what made life worth living. That Sarah would have wanted him to help someone who needed it. That maybe, just maybe, he was allowed to want something for himself too. Over the next 3 days, Nathan and Victoria fell into an unexpected rhythm. Text messages in the morning. Victoria asking about Ava's recovery. Nathan checking how Victoria's preparation for surgery was going. Phone calls in the evening after Ava was asleep. Conversations that started about practical matters and drifted into deeper waters. Victoria told him about her childhood, about losing her parents in college, and throwing herself into work as a way to outrun grief. Nathan told her about the early days with Ava, about learning to braid hair from YouTube videos, and burning more dinners than he could count. They didn't talk about what they were becoming to each other, didn't examine too closely why a temporary arrangement was extending past its logical endpoint. They just talked, two lonely people discovering they didn't have to be quite so lonely anymore. On Saturday, Nathan brought Ava to the park. She was fully recovered and bursting with energy, racing toward the swings with her usual enthusiasm. His phone rang as he pushed her, Victoria's name lighting up the screen. "Hey," he answered, holding the phone between his shoulder and ear while maintaining swing-pushing rhythm. "How are you?" "Nervous." Victoria's voice was tight. "Surgery is Tuesday. I keep trying to work to focus on merger implementation, but all I can think about is, 'Daddy, higher!'" Ava shouted. "Is that Ava?" Victoria asked. "Yeah, we're at the park. Sorry, I can call you back." "No, it's fine. I like hearing her in the background. It's..." Victoria paused. "It's normal, real. My whole life right now feels surreal and frightening. Hearing your daughter laugh is actually comforting." Nathan pushed Ava higher, watching her delighted face. "You want to talk about the surgery? What you're worried about?" "Everything. The surgery itself, obviously, but also the recovery, the radiation that starts 3 weeks after. How I'm supposed to run a company while going through treatment." Victoria's laugh was shaky. "And the stupidest thing, I'm scared of being alone afterward, of waking up from anesthesia with no one there." "You won't be alone," Nathan said firmly. "I'll be there. I already told Danny I need Tuesday off." Silence. Then, in a voice barely above a whisper, "You're really gonna come?" "I said I would. People say a lot of things they don't mean. I'm not people." Nathan caught Ava as she jumped off the swing at its apex, her favorite daredevil move. "When I say I'll be there, I'll be there." "But, Daddy, can we get ice cream?" Ava demanded, tugging on his jacket. "Maybe," Nathan told her, then to Victoria, "I should go. 6-year-olds wait for no man. But Victoria, try not to worry so much. Tuesday's going to be fine. You're going to be fine." "How do you know?" "Because you're too stubborn to be anything else." Victoria laughed. A real laugh this time. "Fair point. Thank you, Nathan, for everything. I'll see you Tuesday?" "Tuesday, 9 a.m. I'll bring terrible hospital coffee and keep you company before they take you back." After they hung up, Ava looked at him with her too perceptive 6-year-old eyes. "Who was that, Daddy?" "A friend," Nathan said. "You don't usually talk to friends that much. Mrs. Chen says you never talk to anyone anymore except me and her." Nathan grimaced. Mrs. Chen was right, but he didn't need his daughter pointing it out. "Well, I'm talking to someone now." "Is it a lady friend?" Ava's eyes lit up with interest. "Like a girlfriend?" "It's complicated, Bug. That's what people say when the answer is yes, but they don't want to say yes." Ava swung on the monkey bars with easy confidence. "Emma's dad has a girlfriend now. Emma says it's weird, but okay. She has 2 cats." Nathan blinked at the conversational whiplash. The girlfriend has 2 cats? Yeah, Emma gets to visit them sometimes. Do you think your friend has cats? I have no idea. Nathan realized he knew a lot about Victoria's professional life and very little about her personal world. Did she have pets? Hobbies? What did she do on weekends when she wasn't closing massive real estate deals? That evening, after Ava was asleep, he texted Victoria. Random question. Do you have any pets? The response came quickly. No. Why? Ava asked. She's decided you're my girlfriend and wants to know if you have cats. A long pause, then, what did you tell her? That it's complicated, which she correctly interpreted as yes. Is it yes? Nathan stared at that question, his heart pounding. I don't know. Is it? I don't know either, but I'd like to find out. Nathan's breath caught. They were crossing a line here, transforming a pretend relationship into something real, something that could actually matter, and therefore actually hurt. Me too, he typed. But Victoria, I have Ava to think about. I can't bring someone into her life who's just going to leave. She's been through enough, I understand, and I'd never want to hurt her. Or you. A pause. Can we take this slow, see what develops? No pressure, no expectations, just see. Yeah, we can do that. Good. Now get some sleep. And Nathan? Yeah. Thank you for letting me be part of your life, even the complicated parts. Nathan set down his phone, feeling something cautiously hopeful unfold in his chest. It was terrifying and thrilling in equal measure, this possibility of connection, of not being alone anymore. He'd spent 3 years wrapped in grief and caution, protecting Ava and himself from further loss. But maybe it was time to risk something again. Maybe Victoria, with her brilliant mind and guarded heart and desperate loneliness, was worth the risk. Tuesday morning arrived cold and gray. The kind of March day that reminded Chicago residents winter wasn't quite finished with them yet. Nathan dropped Ava at Mrs. Chen's earlier than usual, ignoring her curious questions about where he was going and why he was wearing his nice jeans instead of his work clothes. Just helping a friend, he told her, kissing the top of her head. I'll pick you up after school, okay? Is it the lady friend? Ava asked with a knowing smile that was far too mature for 6 years old. Yes, Bug. The lady friend needs some help today. Mrs. Chen caught his eye over Ava's head, her expression warm but concerned. She'd known him long enough to read between the lines, to understand that this was becoming more than a simple favor. Later, Nathan knew she'd ask questions, but for now she just nodded and took Ava's backpack. Good luck, she said quietly. The hospital parking garage was nearly empty at 8:30 in the morning. Nathan sat in his truck for a moment, gripping the steering wheel, wondering if he was making a massive mistake. He barely knew Victoria. They'd spent maybe 20 hours total in each other's company, most of it pretending to be something they weren't. He had no obligation to be here, no reason to keep showing up except that he'd promised. Except that wasn't quite true anymore. The promise had been the beginning, but something else had grown in the spaces between their late-night conversations and carefully honest text messages. Something that felt dangerously close to caring about someone again, to letting someone matter. Nathan grabbed the coffee he'd picked up, one black for Victoria, one with too much cream and sugar for himself, and headed inside. He found Victoria in the pre-surgical waiting area, alone in a corner chair, wearing yoga pants and a soft sweater that made her look younger and more vulnerable than her usual power suits ever did. Her hair was down, falling in loose waves around her shoulders. No makeup, no jewelry, no armor. Just Victoria, stripped of all the protective layers she usually wore. She looked up when he approached, and the relief that flooded her face was so raw it made Nathan's chest ache. You came, she said, her voice unsteady. Told you I would. Nathan handed her the coffee and sat beside her. How are you feeling? Terrified, trying not to show it, failing spectacularly. Victoria wrapped her hands around the coffee cup like it was a lifeline. I keep telling myself it's a routine procedure, that thousands of women have lumpectomies every year, that the prognosis is excellent, but all I can think about is being put under anesthesia, being unconscious and helpless while someone cuts into my body. Nathan took her free hand, lacing their fingers together. Her skin was ice cold. That's a completely normal thing to be scared of. Is it? Victoria laughed shakily. I run a company. I've negotiated multi-million-dollar deals. I've stood in front of hostile boards and defended my decisions, but right now I feel like a terrified child. Fear doesn't care how successful you are, Nathan said quietly. When Sarah died, I had a full-blown panic attack in the garage 3 days later. Danny found me hyperventilating behind a Honda Civic, convinced I was having a heart attack. Turned out it was just terror finally catching up with me. Victoria looked at him with wide eyes. What did Danny do? Sat with me. Didn't try to fix it or talk me out of it. Just sat there until I could breathe again. Nathan squeezed her hand. Sometimes that's all you need, someone to sit with you through the fear. Is that what you're doing? Sitting with me through the fear? Yeah, if you'll let me. Victoria's eyes filled with tears. I don't know how to let people do that. I've spent my whole adult life being self-sufficient, not needing anyone. And now I'm here, and I'm so scared, and I don't know how to be anything except strong. You don't have to be strong right now, Nathan said. You just have to be here. The strength will come when you need it. They sat in silence, hands clasped, while the hospital moved around them. Other patients checked in, nervous and accompanied by spouses or parents or friends. Medical staff moved with practiced efficiency. The coffee machine in the corner hummed and gurgled. At 9:15, a nurse called Victoria's name. She stood, and Nathan stood with her, not letting go of her hand. I can come back as far as they'll let me, he said. You don't have to, Victoria. Nathan waited until she met his eyes. Stop telling me I don't have to do things. I know I don't have to. I want to. There's a difference. Something shifted in her expression. Acceptance, maybe, or the beginning of trust. Okay. Thank you. They followed the nurse through a maze of corridors to a pre-op room where Victoria changed into a hospital gown while Nathan waited outside. When she emerged, pale and shaking slightly, he took her hand again without asking. The anesthesiologist came to explain the procedure, followed by Dr. Morrison with her kind eyes and competent manner. They went through consent forms and pre-op questions while Nathan sat beside the bed, holding Victoria's hand and occasionally translating medical jargon into plain English. You'll be asleep for approximately 90 minutes, Dr. Morrison explained. When you wake up in recovery, you'll likely feel groggy and sore. We'll manage the pain with medication. You'll need someone to drive you home and stay with you for at least 24 hours. Victoria glanced at Nathan. They hadn't discussed this part, the after, the recovery, where she'd go and who would help her. I've got it covered, Nathan said before she could ask. I'll be here when she wakes up, and I'll make sure she gets home safely. Dr. Morrison smiled. Good. Patients with support systems always do better. She patted Victoria's shoulder. I'll see you in the OR. Try to relax. After the doctor left, Victoria turned to Nathan with panic in her eyes. You can't stay with me for 24 hours. You have Ava and work, and I can't ask you to... I already arranged it, Nathan interrupted gently. Ava's having a sleepover at Mrs. Chen's. Danny's covering the shop. I cleared my schedule because I knew you'd need help afterward. Nathan... And before you argue, I also called your assistant and told her you're taking the rest of the week off. No emails, no calls, nothing work-related until Monday at the earliest. Victoria stared at him like he'd grown a second head. You can't just shut down my week. I can, and I did. You're having surgery, Victoria. You need to rest and recover, not run a company from your hospital bed. But the Lakeside merger implementation will survive without you for a few days. Your team is competent, let them handle it. Victoria opened her mouth to protest, then closed it again. Nathan watched her struggle with the loss of control, with being forced to trust other people, with being taken care of instead of being in charge. Finally, she said quietly, I don't know how to do this. How to let someone take care of me. You just let it happen, Nathan said. That's all. You don't have to know how. You just have to let me help. A different nurse appeared with an IV kit. Okay, Ms. Hale, we're going to get you set up and then wheel you back. The anesthesia will make you sleepy pretty quickly. Nathan held Victoria's other hand while the nurse inserted the IV, felt her flinch at the needle stick, saw her jaw clench with the effort of not showing pain. The vulnerability of it, this powerful woman reduced to someone who could be hurt by a needle, made something protective and fierce rise in Nathan's chest. The nurse adjusted the IV and smiled. All set. The anesthesia will start in just a moment. You'll feel relaxed and drowsy, and then we'll take you back. Victoria's grip on Nathan's hand tightened. I'm scared, she whispered. I know. Nathan leaned closer, his forehead nearly touching hers. But you're also brave. And I'll be right here when you wake up. First face you see. I promise. Promise? Promise. The anesthesia began to work. Nathan watched Victoria's eyes grow heavy, watched her fight against the drowsiness for a moment before finally surrendering. Her hand relaxed in his, her breathing deepened, and she was gone, pulled under into medicated sleep. The nurses came to wheel her bed toward the operating room. Nathan walked alongside until they reached a set of double doors he couldn't pass through. "We'll take good care of her," one of the nurses assured him. "Recovery waiting room is back the way you came, second door on the left. We'll update you as soon as she's out." Nathan watched them wheel Victoria through the doors, watched until she disappeared from view, then stood there feeling helpless and useless. This was the part he hated, the waiting, the inability to do anything except trust that strangers would take care of someone who mattered. The recovery waiting room was designed for maximum discomfort. Fluorescent lights, uncomfortable chairs, a television playing morning talk shows at too loud volume. Nathan claimed a corner seat and pulled out his phone. Mrs. Chen had sent photos of Ava at breakfast, smiling with a milk mustache. Danny had texted about a customer question. Normal life, continuing without him, while he sat in a hospital waiting room for a woman he'd known for just over a week. It should have felt strange. It should have felt like too much, too fast, too complicated. Instead, it felt necessary, like this was exactly where he was supposed to be. Nathan thought about the past week, about how Victoria had gone from a desperate stranger to someone whose fear he could read in the tension of her shoulders, whose laugh he'd learned to recognize over the phone, whose loneliness echoed his own in ways that made his chest ache. He thought about Ava's question at the park, whether Victoria was his girlfriend. He still didn't have a good answer. They hadn't been on a date, hadn't kissed, hadn't even had a conversation about what they were to each other beyond the fake marriage that had somehow become a real friendship. But sitting here, waiting for her to come out of surgery, Nathan realized it didn't matter what label they used. What mattered was that he cared. That when she'd said she was scared, his first instinct had been to show up. That the thought of her waking up alone had been intolerable. The minutes crawled by. Nathan tried to read a magazine, gave up after 3 pages, watched part of a cooking show, couldn't focus. Finally, he just sat and watched the clock, counting down the 90 minutes Dr. Morrison had estimated. At the hour mark, a different nurse appeared in the waiting room doorway. "Nathan Cole?" Nathan was on his feet instantly. "That's me. Is Victoria—" "She's fine. Surgery went well. Dr. Morrison will come talk to you in just a moment. But I wanted to let you know she's being moved to recovery now. You'll be able to see her in about 30 minutes, once she's settled." Relief crashed over Nathan so powerfully his knees weakened. "Thank you." Dr. Morrison appeared 15 minutes later, still in surgical scrubs, looking tired but satisfied. "Everything went exactly as planned," she told Nathan. "We removed the tumor with clear margins, and the lymph nodes we sampled show no signs of cancer spread. I'm very pleased with how it went." "So she's okay? Really okay?" "Really okay. She'll be sore for a few days and will need to start radiation therapy in about 3 weeks, but the surgery itself was a complete success." Dr. Morrison smiled. "You can see her now. She's still pretty groggy from the anesthesia, but she's asking for you." Nathan followed another nurse through the recovery ward to a small curtained area. Victoria lay in the bed, pale against white sheets, an IV still in her arm and monitors beeping softly beside her. Her eyes were half closed, glazed with medication, but they tracked to him when he appeared. "Nathan," she mumbled, her words slurred. "You stayed. Told you I would." Nathan pulled a chair close to the bed and took her hand, careful of the IV. "Surgery's over. Dr. Morrison says it went perfectly." "I'm tired," Victoria said, her eyes drifting closed. "Everything's fuzzy." "That's the anesthesia. You can sleep. I'll be right here." Victoria's hand tightened on his with surprising strength. "Don't leave." "I won't." She drifted in and out for the next hour while the anesthesia wore off. Sometimes she'd open her eyes and seem surprised to find Nathan still there, like she couldn't quite believe he'd stayed. Other times she'd mumble things that didn't quite make sense, fragments about board meetings and her parents and something about a dog she'd had as a child. Nathan just sat and held her hand through all of it, occasionally brushing her hair back from her forehead, being the steady presence she needed. Around noon, Victoria woke up more fully, her eyes clear despite the pain medication. "Hey," she said, her voice rough. "Hey yourself. How are you feeling?" Like someone cut into my chest, which technically someone did. Victoria tried to smile. "Did it really go okay? I'm not just dreaming that part?" "It really went okay. Dr. Morrison said it was a complete success. Clear margins, no lymph node involvement. You're going to be fine." Victoria's eyes filled with tears. They spilled over, running down her temples into her hair. "I'm going to be fine," she repeated, like she couldn't quite believe it. Nathan squeezed her hand. "Yeah, you are." They sat in silence while Victoria cried quietly, releasing the fear and tension she'd been holding for weeks. Nathan didn't try to stop her tears or offer empty comfort. He just stayed, his hand in hers, letting her feel whatever she needed to feel. Eventually, Victoria wiped her eyes with her free hand. "I'm sorry. I don't usually fall apart like this. You just had surgery. You're allowed to fall apart. It's not just the surgery." Victoria looked at him with red-rimmed eyes. "It's everything. The diagnosis, the merger, Thomas trying to destroy me, facing all of it alone. Or thinking I had to face it alone. And then you showed up, and you kept showing up, and I don't understand why, but I'm so grateful I could cry about that too." Nathan felt his throat tighten. "You don't have to understand why. You just have to accept that I'm here." "Are you? Really?" Victoria's voice dropped to a whisper. "Because this isn't the deal we made, Nathan. This has gone way past pretending to be my husband for a few days. You're sitting in a hospital recovery room holding my hand. You cleared your schedule to take care of me. You're doing things that real partners do, and we're not. We haven't even..." She gestured helplessly. "I don't know what we are." Nathan had been asking himself the same question for days. Now, sitting beside her hospital bed, watching her struggle to articulate something he felt but couldn't quite name, he found the answer surprisingly simple. "I don't know what we are either," he admitted. "But I know that when you're scared, I want to be there. When you're in pain, I want to help. When you need someone, I want to be the person you call." He paused. "Maybe that's enough for now. We don't have to define it or label it. We just have to let it be whatever it is." Victoria studied his face for a long moment. "You're different from anyone I've ever known." "Is that good or bad?" "Good. Definitely good." She smiled through her tears. "Though terrifying in its own way, I'm not used to people who just show up without expecting something in return." "I'm not expecting anything," Nathan said honestly, "except maybe for you to let me keep showing up." "I can do that." Victoria's eyelids were drooping again, the pain medication pulling her back towards sleep. "Thank you for being here, Nathan, for all of it. Get some rest. I'll be here when you wake up." Victoria's eyes closed, her breathing evening out into the rhythm of sleep. Nathan sat beside her bed and watched her chest rise and fall, watched the monitors track her heartbeat and oxygen levels, watched the IV drip steadily into her arm. He thought about Ava, about Sarah, about the unexpected turns life took when you weren't looking. He thought about how 10 days ago he'd been sitting in a different part of this same hospital, terrified he was dying, and how his life had completely changed in the hours since. How a stranger's desperation had become his purpose, how a lie had become the most honest thing he'd done in years. A nurse came to check Victoria's vitals, smiling when she saw Nathan still there. "You're a good husband," she said quietly, adjusting the IV. Nathan didn't correct her. In this moment, in this small curtained recovery space, he felt like Victoria's husband in all the ways that mattered. Not because of paperwork or ceremonies, but because he'd chosen to stay. Because when she needed someone, he'd decided to be that person. That evening, they moved Victoria to a regular room for overnight observation. Nathan helped her shuffle from the bed to a chair, watched her wince with pain despite the medication, felt helpless and frustrated that he couldn't do more. "You're hovering," Victoria said, a hint of amusement in her voice despite the discomfort. "You just had surgery. I'm allowed to hover." "I'm fine. Sit down before you wear a hole in the floor." Nathan sat, then immediately stood up again. "Do you need more water? Ice chips? Another pillow?" "Nathan," Victoria caught his hand. "Stop. I'm okay. Really." He sank back into the chair, realizing she was right. He was hovering, channeling anxiety into frenetic caretaking. "Sorry." I just want to help. You are helping, just by being here. Victoria settled back against her pillows with a grimace. Tell me something. Distract me from feeling like I've been hit by a truck. What do you want to know? Anything, everything. Tell me about Ava. I've heard you mention her constantly, but I don't really know much about her. What's she like? Nathan felt himself relax into familiar territory. She's stubborn, creative, absolutely fearless in ways that terrify me. She gets that from Sarah, that confidence, that certainty that the world is basically good and people are basically kind. He pulled out his phone and showed Victoria his lock screen photo. This is from last month. She insisted on wearing a tutu to the grocery store because she was a professional ballerina that day. Victoria smiled, studying the image of a gap-toothed girl in a purple tutu and rain boots. She's beautiful. She has your eyes. And Sarah's everything else, thank God. The kid is way too smart for her own good. Last week she lectured me about recycling because apparently her school taught them about climate change, and now she's determined to save the polar bears. 6 years old and already changing the world, Victoria said softly. You must be so proud. Terrified, mostly. She's growing up so fast. Sometimes I look at her and can't believe she was ever that tiny baby Sarah brought home from the hospital. Nathan's voice roughened. Sarah was so good with her. Patient, creative, never stressed even when Ava cried for 3 hours straight. I was always the one panicking, and Sarah would just smile and say, babies can feel your anxiety, so calm down. She made it look easy. And then you had to figure it out alone. Yeah. Nathan stared at Ava's picture. Those first few months after Sarah died were brutal. I had no idea what I was doing. I forgot to pack Ava's lunch, mixed up the carpool schedule, showed up to school events on the wrong day. I felt like I was failing her constantly. But you didn't fail her, Victoria said. She's clearly happy, well-adjusted, loved. You did that, Nathan, all by yourself. With a lot of help from Mrs. Chen and Danny and Ava's teacher and basically everyone who took pity on the clueless single dad. What? Nathan managed to smile. But yeah, we survived. More than survived, actually. We built a pretty good life, just the two of us. Which is why this, Victoria gestured between them, must be complicated for you, letting someone new into that life. Nathan met her gaze. It is complicated. Ava's been through enough loss. I can't bring someone into her world who might leave. She's already asked about you, by the way. Wanted to know if you're my girlfriend and if you have cats. Victoria's eyes widened. What did you tell her? That it's complicated, which she correctly identified as adult code for yes. Nathan leaned forward, elbows on his knees. I need to be honest with you, Victoria. If we're going to keep doing this, whatever this is, eventually you're going to meet Ava. And if you meet her, she's going to get attached. She's desperate for female attention, for someone to fill even a little bit of the hole Sarah left. And if you're not sure about this, about us, about whether you can handle dating someone with a kid, stop, Victoria interrupted. Nathan, I'm not sure about anything right now. I don't know if I can be what you and Ava need. I don't know if I'm capable of the kind of relationship you deserve. I've spent 20 years married to my career, and I'm about to spend the next several months dealing with cancer treatment. She paused, her voice becoming quieter. But I know that when I was terrified in that pre-op room, the only thing that made it bearable was you holding my hand. I know that when I think about facing radiation therapy, the only thing that doesn't make me want to hide under my desk is knowing you might be there. And I know that even though this is complicated and scary and probably insane, I don't want to stop. Nathan felt something shift in his chest, settling into place like a key finding its lock. Okay. Okay. Let's keep going, slowly, carefully, with both of us figuring it out as we go. I'll introduce you to Ava when the time is right. You'll let me be there during your treatment. We'll see what happens. And if it doesn't work, Victoria asked quietly, if I'm too damaged or too career-focused or too, then we'll figure that out too, Nathan said. But let's not doom this before it even starts. Can we do that? Just see what happens without assuming it's going to fail? Victoria was quiet for a long moment, her eyes searching his face for something. Finally, she nodded. Yeah, we can do that. They sat in comfortable silence, the hospital room dim around them as evening fell over Chicago. Victoria dozed intermittently, waking to sip water or shift positions, always checking first to make sure Nathan was still there. He was, reading on his phone or just watching her sleep, a protective presence in the uncomfortable visitor's chair. Around 8 p.m., Victoria woke more fully and looked at him with concern. "Nathan, you should go home. Get some rest. I'm fine here, and the nurses are taking good care of me." "I'm staying," Nathan said firmly. "The chair can't be comfortable. I've slept in worse places." "I'm staying." Victoria opened her mouth to argue, then closed it again. "Thank you," she said instead. "You're welcome." The night passed slowly. Nurses came and went, checking vitals and administering medication. Nathan dozed in fits and starts, jerking awake every time Victoria made a sound, or when the machines beeped their regular alarms. Around 3 a.m., he woke to find Victoria watching him in the dim light. "Can't sleep?" he asked, his voice rough. "Pain meds are wearing off. Nurse will be back with more soon." Victoria shifted carefully in the bed. "I was watching you sleep. You make this face when you're dreaming, your eyebrows scrunched together like you're working on a difficult problem. Probably dreaming about transmissions. They give me nightmares." Victoria smiled. "I dream about spreadsheets. We're quite a pair." "That we are." They fell quiet again, and Nathan thought Victoria had drifted back to sleep when she spoke again, her voice barely above a whisper. "I've been lying here thinking about my life. About all the choices I made, the things I prioritized. I built this incredible career, achieved everything I set out to achieve. But look at me now, lying in a hospital bed at 43, having surgery for cancer, and the only person who showed up is someone I met 10 days ago in a corridor." Her voice cracked. "What does that say about the life I built?" Nathan moved to sit on the edge of her bed, careful not to jostle her. "It says you focused on different things than other people might have. That's not wrong, Victoria, it's just different." "But I'm alone, Nathan. I have no one. If you hadn't been there that day, if I hadn't been desperate enough to grab your hand and lie..." She broke off, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I'd be going through this completely by myself. And that terrifies me more than the cancer does." Nathan brushed the tears from her cheeks with his thumb. "But I was there, and you're not alone. Maybe that's what matters." "Why were you there?" Victoria asked. "Really? You said you needed your biopsy results, but you could have waited for those anywhere. Why were you sitting in that specific spot at that specific time?" Nathan thought back to that day, to the fear that had driven him to the hospital, to the choice to sit in that particular corridor. "Honestly, I don't know. Fate, coincidence, random chance? Does it matter? Maybe not." Victoria wiped her eyes. "I'm not usually like this. So emotional. So vulnerable. The medication is making everything feel too big. Or maybe you're just finally letting yourself feel things you've been pushing down for a long time," Nathan suggested gently. "That's terrifying." "Yeah, but also necessary sometimes." The nurse arrived with more pain medication, and Victoria drifted back to sleep within minutes. Nathan returned to his chair and watched the sky gradually lighten outside the window, watched Chicago wake up and begin another day. He thought about Victoria's question, why had he been there, and realized the answer was simpler than he'd thought. He'd been there because he was supposed to be, because sometimes life put you in exactly the right place at exactly the right time to find something, someone you didn't even know you needed. By morning, Victoria was clear-headed and restless, ready to leave the hospital. Dr. Morrison came by for a final check and signed the discharge papers with instructions for wound care and restrictions on activities. "No heavy lifting, no strenuous exercise for at least 2 weeks," she told Victoria. "You'll need to come back in 5 days for a wound check, and we'll discuss radiation therapy scheduling at that appointment. Any questions?" Victoria shook her head, already mentally checking out, planning her return to normal life. In the car, Nathan's pickup truck, not her usual sedan, she was quiet, staring out the window at the familiar streets of Chicago. Nathan had expected her to direct him to some luxury high-rise in the Gold Coast or a renovated brownstone in Lincoln Park. Instead, she gave him an address in Streeterville, a neighborhood of anonymous apartment buildings that could house anyone from students to CEOs. The building was nice, but not ostentatious, with a doorman who greeted Victoria warmly and looked at Nathan with curiosity. They rode the elevator to the 15th floor in silence. Victoria fumbled with her keys, her hands still shaky from the surgery and medication, and Nathan gently took them from her to unlock the door. The apartment was exactly what Nathan had expected, and nothing like it at the same time. Modern, minimalist, expensive furniture arranged with precision, floor-to-ceiling windows with views of Lake Michigan, art that probably cost more than Nathan's truck, but also strangely impersonal, like a hotel suite rather than a home. No photos, no personal touches, nothing that said Victoria lives here instead of someone lives here. "It's not much," Victoria said, reading his expression. "It's beautiful," Nathan replied diplomatically. "It's empty." Victoria sank onto the couch with a wince. "I've lived here for 8 years, and I've never once had someone over for dinner, never hosted a party, never even had a friend stop by for coffee. It's just a place to sleep between workdays." Nathan set down the bag of her belongings and looked around with new eyes. She was right. It was empty, beautiful and expensive and utterly devoid of life. "Well," he said, "maybe that changes now." Victoria looked at him with something fragile and hopeful in her expression, like she wanted to believe him but didn't quite know how. Nathan decided not to push it. Instead, he went to her kitchen, pristine, barely used, the kind of kitchen that came with expensive appliances no one ever cooked with, and started opening cabinets. "What are you doing?" Victoria called from the couch. "Making you something to eat. When's the last time you had actual food?" "I don't remember. Yesterday sometime?" Nathan found pasta, jarred sauce, some vegetables that were miraculously still fresh. He set to work, feeling Victoria's eyes on him as he moved around her kitchen like he belonged there. The normalcy of it, cooking in someone else's space, the domestic simplicity of boiling water and chopping garlic, felt grounding after the intensity of the hospital. "You don't have to do this," Victoria said when he brought her a plate 20 minutes later. "I know, eat anyway." She did, and Nathan watched her relax slightly with each bite, watched color return to her face, watched the pain medication and exhaustion and fear gradually recede into something more manageable. He ate his own pasta standing at the kitchen counter, giving her space while staying close enough to help if she needed it. After they'd eaten, Victoria tried to stand and gasped, her hand going to her chest where the surgical site was still fresh and painful. "Slow," Nathan said, moving to her side. "Let me help. I need to change, get out of these clothes, but I don't think I can lift my arms high enough to—" Victoria's voice cracked with frustration. "I hate this. Hate being helpless." "You're not helpless. You're recovering. There's a difference." Nathan kept his voice gentle. "Where are your comfortable clothes? I'll help you change." Victoria directed him to her bedroom, another space that felt more like a hotel than a home, and he found soft pajamas, a button-up shirt that wouldn't require lifting her arms over her head. He helped her change with careful efficiency, trying to give her dignity while being practical about the assistance she needed. Victoria trembled through the whole process, whether from pain or emotion or simple exhaustion, Nathan couldn't tell. When she was finally settled on the couch in clean clothes with a blanket tucked around her, Victoria looked at him with wet eyes. "I can't believe you're doing this," she whispered. "Doing what?" "All of it. Taking care of me. Cooking. Helping me change. Staying when you could be with your daughter, or at work, or literally anywhere else." Nathan sat beside her, careful not to jostle her. "Where else would I be?" "That's what I don't understand." Victoria's voice broke. "We barely know each other, Nathan. This is insane. Normal people don't do this for strangers." "We're not strangers anymore," Nathan said quietly. "And maybe normal people don't do this, but I'm doing it anyway. Because it's right. Because you need help and I can give it. Because somewhere in the past 10 days you stopped being someone I was helping and became someone I care about." "Why?" Victoria asked, the word almost a sob. "Why do you care? I'm difficult and cold and I've built my entire life around not needing anyone. Why would you want to—" She gestured helplessly, unable to finish. Nathan thought about that, about all the reasons and non-reasons that had brought him here. "You asked about Ava at the hospital. That first day when you picked up my phone, you looked at her picture and said she was beautiful. You didn't have to do that. You were terrified about your own diagnosis, but you took a moment to be kind about my daughter. That mattered." He paused. "And then you grabbed my hand when Thomas was circling, and I saw how scared you were, how alone. And I recognized it, Victoria. I know what it's like to be terrified and isolated and convinced you have to handle everything yourself. I've been there." After Sarah died? Victoria said softly. Yeah, after Sarah died, I shut down. Stopped talking to people, stopped accepting help. Convinced myself that if I just kept moving forward and took care of Ava, then everything would be fine. But I was drowning, and I was too proud or too scared to admit it. Nathan met her eyes. You reminded me of that version of myself. And I thought, if I could help you, if I could be the person who shows up when you're scared, maybe it would mean something. Maybe it would matter. It matters, Victoria said, tears streaming down her face now. It matters so much, I don't even know how to process it. They sat together in silence while Victoria cried, releasing something she'd been holding for far longer than the past 10 days. Nathan didn't try to stop her tears or offer platitudes. He just stayed, one hand resting on her shoulder in silent support, letting her feel whatever she needed to feel. Eventually, Victoria wiped her eyes and laughed shakily. I'm a mess. You're human. There's a difference. I don't usually let people see me like this. Maybe that's part of the problem, Nathan suggested gently. Victoria considered that, her fingers playing with the edge of her blanket. My parents died when I was 21. Car accident on their way home from my college graduation. One minute they were celebrating with me, the next they were gone. And I learned that day that the only person you can really count on is yourself. That even the people you love most can disappear without warning. Nathan's chest tightened. That's what happened to me with Sarah. One morning she was making pancakes, the next she was gone. No warning, no chance to prepare. So we both learned to not count on anyone, Victoria said. Yeah, but maybe we learned the wrong lesson. Maybe the real lesson is that loss is inevitable, but isolation doesn't prevent it. It just makes you more alone when it happens. Victoria looked at him with something like wonder. How did you get so wise? 3 years of therapy and a very patient counselor who kept telling me the same things until they finally stuck. Nathan smiled slightly. Also, Ava, kids don't let you stay closed off. She needed me to be present and engaged, so I had to figure out how to do that, even when it hurt. Tell me more about her, Victoria said. About what she's like, what she loves. I want to know. So Nathan did. He told Victoria about Ava's obsession with art, about how she filled notebooks with drawings of elaborate fantasy worlds. He told her about the time Ava had insisted on wearing a superhero cape to the grocery store for 3 weeks straight because she was protecting everyone from invisible villains. He told her about parent-teacher conferences where Ava's teacher praised her creativity and kindness while gently suggesting she might want to actually stay in her seat during class instead of wandering around helping other students. Victoria listened with rapt attention, occasionally smiling or asking questions. Nathan realized she was hungry for this, for glimpses into a life so different from her own, for evidence that love and family and ordinary chaos still existed in the world. She sounds wonderful, Victoria said when Nathan paused. And terrifying. I have no idea how to interact with children. You just talk to them like they're people. Ava can smell condescension from a mile away, but she responds to anyone who treats her with respect. Nathan hesitated, then added, She's been asking about you. Wants to know when she can meet my lady friend. Victoria's eyes widened. You told her about me. Not much, just that I have a friend who needed help. But Ava's smart. She's figured out you're important. Nathan leaned forward. I'm not trying to pressure you. If you're not ready to meet her, that's fine. But eventually, if we keep doing this, she's going to be part of the equation. I know. Victoria was quiet for a moment. What if she doesn't like me? What if I say the wrong thing or don't know how to connect with her? Then we figure it out together, Nathan said. There's no perfect script for this, Victoria. We just try and adjust and try again. Victoria nodded slowly. Okay, not right now. I need to get through surgery, recovery, and start radiation, but soon. I'd like to meet her. She'd like that too. Nathan checked his watch. Nearly 6 p.m. I should head out soon. Pick up Ava from Mrs. Chen's, get her to bed at a reasonable hour. But I can come back tomorrow if you need anything. You don't have to, Victoria started, then caught herself. Actually, yes, I'd like that. If you're offering, I'm offering. Nathan stood. Call me if you need anything tonight. Anything at all. I don't care what time it is. I will. Thank you, Nathan, for everything. Nathan drove through Chicago's evening traffic, feeling like he'd crossed some invisible threshold. The past 10 days had transformed from a simple act of helping into something far more complex and meaningful. He cared about Victoria, not just in the abstract way you might care about a stranger in need, but in the specific, terrifying way you cared about someone who mattered, someone whose pain hurt you, whose fear scared you, whose smile made something warm unfold in your chest. It was too fast, the practical part of his brain insisted, too complicated, too risky when he had Ava to think about. But his heart, the part that had been locked down tight for 3 years, was whispering something different. That maybe fast didn't mean wrong. That maybe complicated was worth it. That maybe taking a risk on someone was exactly what both he and Victoria needed. Mrs. Chen answered the door with Ava already in pajamas, bouncing with barely contained energy despite the late hour. "Daddy, Mrs. Chen made cookies and we played dress-up and I made a fort. And can I have a sleepover here every week, please?" Nathan laughed, scooping her up. "We'll see, Bug. Thank Mrs. Chen for having you." "Thank you, Mrs. Chen." Ava wrapped her arms around the older woman's neck. "You're the best almost grandma ever." Mrs. Chen's eyes misted over. She'd never had children of her own, had adopted Ava and Nathan as her surrogate family after Sarah died. "You're welcome any time, sweetheart." In the car, Ava chattered nonstop about her day, barely pausing for breath. Nathan listened with half his attention while the other half remained with Victoria, wondering if she was okay alone, if she needed anything, if she was in pain. "Daddy, you're not listening," Ava accused, her 6-year-old perception cutting through his distraction. "Sorry, Bug. Tell me again about the fort." "No, tell me about your friend, the lady friend you keep visiting." Nathan glanced at her in the rearview mirror. "What do you want to know? Is she nice? Is she pretty? Does she like kids? Does she have any kids of her own?" Ava fired questions like bullets. "Emma says when her dad got a girlfriend, she was scared the girlfriend wouldn't like her. But the girlfriend has cats, and that made it okay." Nathan pulled into their driveway and turned to face his daughter. "My friend is very nice. And yes, she's pretty. She doesn't have kids, and I don't know if she likes them, but I think she'd like you." "How do you know?" "Because you're impossible not to like." Ava considered this. "When do I get to meet her?" "Soon. She's not feeling well right now. She had to have surgery, so we need to wait until she's better." "What kind of surgery?" Ava's eyes widened with concern. "Is she going to be okay?" "She's going to be fine. She just needs some time to heal." Nathan unbuckled his seatbelt. "But when she's feeling better, maybe we can all have lunch together or something, if you want to." "I want to!" Ava scrambled out of the car. "Can I draw her a picture? To make her feel better? Pictures always make me feel better when I'm sick." Nathan's throat tightened. "I think she'd love that, Bug." That night, after Ava was asleep, Nathan sat at his kitchen table with a beer and his phone. Victoria had texted, "Pain is manageable. Not sleeping well, but that's probably normal. Thank you again for today." I don't know how to express what it meant. Nathan typed back, "You don't have to express it. Just focus on healing and try to sleep. Easier said than done. My brain won't stop." "What's it thinking about?" A long pause, then, "You, this. What happens next? Whether I'm capable of being what you need." Nathan stared at that message, his heart pounding. "What I need is for you to stop second-guessing yourself. Stop assuming you're going to fail at this before you even try. We're figuring it out together, remember? I'm scared. Me too. But maybe that's okay. Maybe being scared means it matters. It matters. More than I expected." Nathan smiled at his phone. "Get some sleep, Victoria. I'll check on you tomorrow." "Okay. Good night, Nathan. Good night." The next few weeks fell into a pattern. Nathan would stop by Victoria's apartment after dropping Ava at school, bringing coffee and breakfast, helping her change the surgical dressing, making sure she was taking her medication. They'd talk about nothing and everything, about their childhoods and their fears, about the small moments that made up a life. Victoria's assistant handled work emergencies remotely while Victoria focused on recovery. It drove her crazy at first, relinquishing control, trusting other people to manage her company. But gradually she relaxed into it, learned that the world didn't collapse without her constant attention. Nathan brought Ava's drawing one morning, a crayon rendering of a rainbow with the words "Feel better soon" in messy child handwriting. Victoria cried when she saw it, then carefully hung it on her refrigerator, The first personal touch in her pristine apartment. She's very talented, Victoria said, studying the drawing. And very sweet to think of me. She asks about you every day, wants to know when you're feeling well enough to meet her. Victoria looked nervous. I've been thinking about that. Maybe this weekend, if you think she'd want to. She'd love it. Nathan paused. We could do something simple. Lunch at the park, maybe. Low pressure. Okay, yes, let's do that. Saturday arrived gray but warm, early spring finally asserting itself over winter's stubborn grip. Nathan picked up Victoria in his truck, watching her carefully navigate the step up into the passenger seat, still moving cautiously 2 weeks post-surgery. Ava's vibrating with excitement, he warned. She's been planning what to wear all morning and insisting we bring the good crayons in case you want to draw. Victoria's hands twisted in her lap. What if I mess this up? What if I say the wrong thing and she decides she doesn't like me? Then we try again. Victoria, breathe. She's 6, not a board of directors. Just be yourself. They picked up Ava at Mrs. Chen's, and Nathan watched his daughter's face light up when she saw Victoria in the front seat. Hi! Ava scrambled into her booster seat, craning to see Victoria better. I'm Ava. Are you my dad's friend? Did you like my picture? I can make you another one if you want. Do you like purple? Purple's my favorite, but Emma likes pink, and that's okay too because everyone can have different favorites. Victoria blinked at the onslaught of words, then smiled, a genuine, delighted smile that transformed her face. Hi, Ava. I'm Victoria. I loved your picture so much I hung it on my refrigerator, and I like purple too. Really? That's so cool. Can I see your refrigerator sometime? Does it have other pictures or just mine? Just yours right now, Victoria admitted. My apartment doesn't have many pictures, or much of anything personal, really. Ava's eyes widened with horror. That's so sad. You need more pictures. I can make you lots of pictures. I can fill your whole apartment. Nathan caught Victoria's eye in the rearview mirror. She looked overwhelmed but also charmed, like she couldn't quite believe this small hurricane of enthusiasm was real. At the park, Ava dragged Victoria to the swings, chattering nonstop about school and her friends and the caterpillar she'd found yesterday that was going to turn into a butterfly. And did Victoria know butterflies drink with their feet? Victoria pushed Ava on the swings with careful movements that protected her healing chest, and Nathan watched them from a bench, something warm and hopeful expanding in his chest. Victoria was trying so hard, asking questions, listening intently to Ava's rambling answers, laughing at her 6-year-old jokes that weren't particularly funny, but were told with such conviction they became hilarious. After the swings, they spread a blanket on the grass and ate sandwiches Nathan had packed. Ava pulled out her crayons and paper, immediately starting a new drawing for Victoria. This is you, Ava announced, drawing a stick figure with long dark hair. And this is a rainbow because rainbows make people happy. And this is me and Daddy. She added 2 more stick figures. We're all together and we're happy. See? Victoria stared at the drawing, her eyes suspiciously bright. It's beautiful, Ava. Thank you. You can put it on your refrigerator too. Then you'll have 2 pictures. After lunch, Ava ran off to the playground, and Nathan and Victoria sat together on the blanket, watching her climb and swing and fearlessly navigate equipment that made Nathan's heart race with protective anxiety. She's wonderful, Victoria said softly. So open and loving and completely uninhibited. I don't think I was ever like that, even as a child. You were probably brilliant and serious even then, Nathan said. I was lonely. Victoria pulled her knees to her chest, wincing slightly at the movement. My parents were wonderful but busy. I spent most of my childhood reading or studying, trying to earn their attention through achievement. It worked, but I never learned how to just be, how to exist without performing. Nathan watched Ava help a younger child reach the monkey bars, his daughter's natural kindness on full display. She can teach you that, if you let her. I'd like that. Victoria turned to him. I was terrified about today, convinced I'd disappoint her or say something wrong. But she makes it easy, doesn't she? She just accepts people as they are. She learned that from Sarah, and from loss, probably. She knows life is short and people disappear, so she loves fiercely while she can. They sat in comfortable silence, watching Ava play. Nathan reached over and took Victoria's hand, and she laced their fingers together naturally, like they'd been doing it for years instead of weeks. I start radiation therapy next week, Victoria said quietly. 5 days a week for 6 weeks. Dr. Morrison says I'll be tired, maybe nauseous. My skin will probably get irritated where they target the treatment. I'll be there, Nathan said, as much as you want me to be. I don't want to be a burden. You're not a burden. You're someone I care about who needs support. There's a difference. Nathan squeezed her hand. Let me help, Victoria. Let me be there through the hard parts. Victoria looked at him with something vulnerable and terrified in her eyes. What if I fall apart? What if the treatment is worse than I expect and I can't maintain the strong front everyone needs me to maintain? Then you fall apart and I'll help you put yourself back together. That's what people do for each other. I've never had that before. Someone who stays through the falling apart. You have it now. Nathan held her gaze. If you want it. Victoria's answer was to lean her head on his shoulder, careful of her healing chest, and hold his hand like a lifeline. They sat that way while Ava played, while the spring afternoon stretched around them, while something fragile and precious took root between them. The radiation therapy was brutal in its consistency. Every weekday for 6 weeks, Victoria reported to the hospital for treatment that left her progressively more exhausted. Nathan drove her to the first week of appointments, sitting in the waiting room with coffee and magazines, being there when she emerged pale and shaky. By the 3rd week, Victoria's skin was raw and irritated, her energy depleted. She struggled to work even part-time, struggled to maintain the facade of control she'd built her life around. One Thursday evening, Nathan arrived at her apartment to find her crying on the couch, her laptop abandoned beside her. I can't do this, she said when she saw him. I can't work, can't think, can barely get out of bed in the morning. The radiation is destroying me and I still have 3 more weeks and I just... She broke off, sobbing. Nathan sat beside her and pulled her carefully into his arms. You're going to make it through this. I know it doesn't feel like it right now, but you will. How do you know? Because you're the strongest person I've ever met, and because you're not doing it alone anymore. Victoria cried against his shoulder for a long time. When she finally pulled back, her face was blotchy and her eyes were red, but she looked somehow lighter. I got mascara on your shirt, she said, attempting a smile. I've had worse on my shirts. Ava once wiped her entire lunch on my shoulder. That surprised a laugh out of Victoria. You're good at this, making awful things feel manageable. I've had practice. Nathan brushed her hair back from her face. Sarah had terrible migraines in the last year of her life. We didn't know they were connected to the aneurysm, just thought they were stress. But she'd spend whole days in bed with the curtains drawn, and I'd bring her water and medication and sit with her in the dark. I learned that sometimes you can't fix the pain. You can only witness it. Thank you for witnessing mine, Victoria said quietly. They ordered takeout and watched a movie, Victoria falling asleep halfway through with her head on Nathan's shoulder. He stayed until nearly midnight, not wanting to leave her alone, texting Mrs. Chen to let her know he'd be late picking up Ava the next morning. As the weeks progressed, Victoria became part of Nathan and Ava's routine. She'd join them for dinner sometimes, arriving exhausted from radiation, but lighting up when Ava launched into stories about her day. She started keeping crayons at her apartment for when Ava visited, her once pristine refrigerator gradually becoming covered with rainbow drawings and glitter art. One evening, Nathan found Ava and Victoria sitting cross-legged on Victoria's living room floor, surrounded by craft supplies. We're making a garden, Ava announced. Victoria said her apartment needs more color, so we're making paper flowers. Nathan leaned against the doorframe watching them work. Victoria was showing Ava how to fold paper into origami roses, her movements patient despite her obvious exhaustion. Ava was chattering about how different flowers meant different things, roses for love, daisies for friendship, sunflowers for happiness. We should make lots of sunflowers, Ava decided, because we want Victoria to be happy. Right, Daddy? Right, Bug. Victoria looked up at Nathan, and the expression on her face, soft and open and genuinely happy, made his heart skip. She was different than the woman he'd met in that hospital corridor. Still brilliant, still driven, but warmer now. More willing to be vulnerable, to accept help, to let people in. Later that night, after Ava had fallen asleep on Victoria's couch and Nathan had carried her to his truck, Victoria walked him to the door. Thank you for sharing her with me, Victoria said. I know that's not easy, letting someone into your daughter's life. You're good with her, better than you think you are. Nathan paused. She asked me yesterday if you were going to be her new mom. Victoria's eyes widened. What did you say? I said that relationships are complicated and adults need time to figure things out, but that you care about both of us and we care about you. I do care, more than I thought possible. Victoria stepped closer. Nathan, I need to tell you something. Okay? I'm falling for you, for both of you, really. This family you've let me become part of. Victoria's voice shook slightly. It terrifies me because I don't know how to do this, how to be someone's partner and someone's, she hesitated over the word, mother figure, but I want to try. If you'll let me. Nathan felt something settle into place in his chest, like a key turning in a lock he hadn't realized was there. I'm falling for you too. Have been for weeks. Probably since that first dinner when you defended me against Thomas, and I realized you were more than just the CEO mask you wear. So what do we do now? Victoria asked. Nathan smiled. We keep doing what we've been doing, taking it day by day, figuring it out as we go, except maybe we stop pretending we're just friends. And start admitting we're something more? Yeah, something like that. Victoria closed the distance between them and kissed him. It was gentle and tentative, a question more than a statement. Nathan kissed her back, his hand coming up to cup her face, tasting salt from her earlier tears and coffee, and something uniquely Victoria. When they pulled apart, Victoria was smiling, a real smile, unguarded and beautiful. I have 3 more weeks of radiation, she said, and then I'll be in recovery for a while after. It's going to be messy and difficult, and I'll probably be impossible to deal with sometimes. I can handle messy and difficult, Nathan assured her. I live with a 6-year-old. Victoria laughed. Fair point. She sobered. I'm serious, though. I come with a lot of baggage. A demanding career, health issues, no experience with relationships or children. You're taking on a lot. And you're taking on a widower with a young daughter and a life that's nowhere near as glamorous as yours. Seems to me we're both taking a risk. Yeah. Victoria kissed him again, softer this time. Yeah, we are. The final weeks of radiation passed in a blur of exhaustion and small victories. Victoria finished her last treatment on a Thursday in late April, emerging from the hospital with Nathan beside her and relief written across her face. It's done, she said, almost disbelieving. 6 weeks of treatment, and it's actually done. You did it, Nathan said. I'm so proud of you. They went to Victoria's apartment, and she collapsed on the couch, finally allowing herself to feel the full weight of what she'd been through. Nathan sat beside her, and they stayed that way for a long time, her head on his shoulder, his arm around her waist, both of them breathing in the simple fact that this particular battle was over. A week later, Dr. Morrison delivered the news they'd been hoping for. The treatment had been successful. All signs indicated the cancer was gone. Victoria would need regular monitoring, annual mammograms, possibly hormone therapy to prevent recurrence. But for now, she was cancer-free. Victoria cried in the doctor's office, then cried again in Nathan's truck, then cried a third time when they told Ava that night over dinner. So you're all better? Ava asked, her eyes wide. I'm all better, Victoria confirmed. Thanks in part to all those pictures you made me. I think they had magic healing powers. Ava beamed. I knew it. Art is magic. That's what my teacher says. That weekend, they celebrated with a picnic at Millennium Park. Nathan packed sandwiches and fruit while Victoria brought a blanket and Ava brought enough toys and art supplies for a small army. They found a spot near the Cloudgate sculpture and Ava immediately demanded they take pictures. Nathan's phone filled with images, Ava making faces at her reflection in the bean, Victoria laughing with her head thrown back, the 3 of them together with the Chicago skyline behind them. They looked like a family. They felt like a family. After lunch, Ava ran off to play, and Nathan and Victoria sat together on the blanket, watching her. I never thought I'd have this, Victoria said quietly. A partner. A child in my life, even if she's not technically mine. Lazy Saturday afternoons in the park. It all seemed like something other people got to have, not me. And now? Nathan asked. Now I can't imagine my life without it, without you and Ava. Victoria turned to him. I love you, Nathan. I should probably wait longer to say that, should be more cautious and strategic. But I'm done being cautious. I love you and I love your daughter, and I want to build a life with you both if you'll have me. Nathan's heart felt too big for his chest.
I love you too. Have for a while now, actually. I was just waiting for the right moment to say it.
Is this the right moment? Perfect moment. Nathan kissed her, tasting sunshine and possibility and the strange miracle of second chances. Ava came running back, breathless and grass-stained. Are you guys kissing? Emma says when grown-ups kiss, it means they love each other. Victoria laughed, pulling Ava onto her lap despite the lingering soreness in her chest. Emma's very smart.
So you love my daddy?
I do.
And you love me?
Very much. Ava considered this, her young face serious. Good, because I love you too. And I think you should live with us because then we could have breakfast together every day and you could help me with my art projects and we could be a real family. Nathan caught Victoria's eye over Ava's head. They hadn't discussed living arrangements or next steps or any of the practical details of merging their lives. But looking at Victoria now, at the hope and fear and love in her expression, Nathan knew they'd figure it out. What do you think? He asked her. Ready to take on breakfast duty and art projects? And messy rooms and parent-teacher conferences and all the chaos that comes with being part of this family? All of it, Victoria said. I want all of it. 6 months later, Victoria sold her pristine Streeterville apartment and moved into Nathan's small house in Bridgeport. She brought her minimal furniture and her growing collection of Ava's artwork, slowly transforming the space into something that belonged to all three of them. Her coffee maker sat beside Nathan's on the counter. Her books filled the shelves alongside his repair manuals. Her laughter filled the rooms where grief had once lived. She cut back her hours at work, delegating more to her capable team, learning that the company didn't collapse without her constant attention. The Lakeside merger was a massive success, cementing her reputation and silencing critics like Thomas Brennan. But the victory felt less important than coming home to dinner with Nathan and Ava, less significant than lazy Sunday mornings in bed, less crucial than building a life that mattered beyond boardrooms and profit margins. Nathan proposed on a random Tuesday evening while they were doing dishes together. No elaborate plan, no perfect moment, just Ava asleep upstairs and the two of them standing at the sink, and Nathan suddenly unable to imagine a future where Victoria wasn't his wife in truth, instead of fiction. "Marry me," he said, soap suds dripping from his hands. "For real this time. Not for a board meeting or a merger, just because I love you and want to spend my life with you." Victoria stared at him, a dish towel frozen in her hands. "Are you serious?" "Completely serious. I know we've only been together for—" "Yes," Victoria interrupted. "Yes, I'll marry you. Real wedding, real marriage, real everything." They married 3 months later in a small ceremony at the courthouse, the same place Victoria had claimed they'd married in their fabricated story. Ava served as flower girl and ring bearer, taking both jobs very seriously. Mrs. Chen cried through the entire ceremony. Danny served as Nathan's best man. Victoria's assistant and a handful of board members attended, including Margaret Chen, who'd voted for the merger and later told Victoria she'd known from the beginning that Nathan was good for her. After the ceremony, they had a reception at a small restaurant. Nothing like the formal dinners Victoria used to attend, but warm and genuine and full of people who actually cared about them. Ava gave a toast that mostly consisted of her saying she was happy to have a mom again, which made everyone cry, including Victoria. That night, after Ava was asleep and the house was quiet, Nathan and Victoria lay in bed together, Victoria's head on his chest, his hand tracing lazy patterns on her shoulder. "Do you ever think about how we met?" Victoria asked. "How insane it was that I grabbed your hand and made you pretend to be my husband." "All the time," Nathan admitted. "I think about what would have happened if I hadn't been sitting in that specific corridor at that specific time. If you hadn't been desperate enough to take that risk, we would have missed each other completely, lived our whole lives in parallel without ever connecting. Instead, you're stuck with me in a 6-year-old tornado." Victoria smiled against his chest. "Best decision I ever made, grabbing your hand that day. Best decision I ever made was going along with it." They lay in comfortable silence, listening to the house settle around them, the creak of old floors, the hum of the refrigerator, the distant sound of Ava's music box playing in her room, all the small sounds of a home, of a life built together. "Nathan," Victoria said quietly. "Yeah? Thank you for staying. That first day in the hospital and every day since. Thank you for not leaving when it would have been easier. Thank you for letting me stay. For taking a chance on a mechanic who had no idea what he was doing. You knew exactly what you were doing, Victoria said. You were showing up, being present, caring about someone who desperately needed it, even if she didn't know how to ask. Nathan kissed the top of her head. We saved each other, I think. You needed someone to hold your hand through fear. I needed someone to remind me I was capable of connection again. So we're even? We're even. But they both knew that wasn't quite true. What they'd found wasn't about keeping score or evening debts. It was about two lonely people colliding in a moment of desperation and choosing, day after day, to keep showing up for each other. About building something real from a foundation of pretense. About learning that sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one with all the answers. It's just the one who stays. Outside, Chicago sprawled in the darkness. Millions of lives unfolding in millions of ways. But in this small house in Bridgeport, in this bed where Nathan and Victoria held each other, there was only gratitude. For chance encounters and desperate lies, for hospital corridors and manufactured photos, for the courage to keep showing up even when it was hard, for learning that the opposite of being alone wasn't just having someone there, it was letting someone matter, letting them see your fear and your weakness and your desperate need for connection, and trusting they'd stay anyway. And they had stayed. Both of them, choosing each other every single day. In the morning, Ava would wake them too early, bouncing into their room with plans for the day and questions about breakfast and demands that they all make art together. Victoria would groan but smile, and Nathan would make coffee while Ava chattered, and they'd start another ordinary, miraculous day of being a family. But for now, in the quiet darkness, Nathan and Victoria held each other and breathed in the simple truth that they were home, not alone. Never alone again. Sometimes the person who saves you isn't the one with power or answers or solutions. It's just the one who shows up, who sits with you through the fear, who holds your hand in hospital corridors and fake marriages in real life. It's the one who stays. And Nathan and Victoria had both learned, finally, how to let someone stay.